Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of April Jones. April Jones was born on April 4, 2007. April is a cheerful child, but she also has her own problems. Born 7 weeks early, she had some early health issues, but with medical support, she grew into a typical young girl. However, April was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, a condition caused by a brain injury, often due to a lack of oxygen at or shortly after birth. Cerebral palsy affected her lower body. Although her condition was not very severe, it caused her pain and made basic muscle movements difficult. Despite having a mild condition, she required special care. On October 1, 2012, at around 7 o'clock in the evening, 5 years old, April was playing outside with her friend at the Brin housing estate in West Wales. Usually, April's parents don't let her go out to play when it's dark like that, but because she had received an excellent report card the day before, they allowed her extra playtime. April was supposed to return home after playing outside with her friend for about 20 minutes, but after that she did not return home. Her parents had last seen her on a bike, so they went out to look for her. They found April's 7-year-old friend nearby, but April wasn't with her. The friend explained that April had gotten into a car. Fortunately, she could describe the man who took April. He was wearing a green jacket, had blue or green eyes, brown hair, and a beard. Despite being young, the friend provided a crucial detail: she saw April get into the car on the driver's side. In the UK, the steering wheel is on the right side, which suggests the man was driving a left-hand drive car. Despite it being nighttime, but the police responded swiftly. The first officers reached the scene, the 999 call. While search teams were being assembled, authorities interviewed people who knew April to determine if anything unusual had occurred that day or in the days before her disappearance. April's family couldn't think of anything that could help the police. April had gone to her swimming class earlier that day, and after returning home, she was allowed to play outside with her friends. It had only been a short while since April went out, but it was getting late in the autumn, so it would get dark soon, making it very difficult to find her. News of April's disappearance spread quickly throughout the neighborhood, through word of mouth and social networks. Within hours, locals left their homes to help search her. Although their intentions were good, this outpouring of support hindered the police investigation. The police were grateful for everyone's enthusiasm, but they still needed to conduct door-to-door inquiries to see if anyone had seen April or seen the person who might have taken her. The problem was that very few people were at home because most had gone out to assist with the search. The story of April's disappearance quickly drew national attention. Television crews and reporters from all over the country flocked to the small town to cover the incident. At 10:30, the police provided a status update to the public and media, voicing concern as they still hadn't found any leads related to April. They appealed to anyone with information to come forward right away. On the evening of October 1st, authorities released more details about April's disappearance. At the time she went missing, April was wearing her school polo shirt and a purple coat. Over 100 people had joined the search to support the police. The local community played a crucial role in the search, as their knowledge of the area invaluable. In addition to locals, a large number of volunteers from England traveled to Wales to assist, and several people from South Wales also joined the search. The search was difficult due to the town's surroundings, which included mountains, waterfalls, gorges, dense forests, and uneven terrain, all of which were exacerbated by the cold, rainy, and overcast autumn evening. The police divided the volunteers into multiple search teams, which then combed through a vast area of about 60 square kilometers. After 8 hours of searching the difficult Welsh terrain, by 3:30 a.m., the volunteers had thoroughly covered the area. Although the situation was desperate, there was a poignant beauty in the fact that many people were willing to give their time to help find little April. This outpouring of support must have brought some comfort to her family, who waited anxiously by the phone for news. However, the police had prohibited the family from joining the search, fear that they might encounter terrible things about their daughter. On October 2, 2012, April was still missing despite extensive nighttime searches. In response, the police in Wales issued a child rescue notice, a nationwide alert that disseminated April's description and that of her abductor to all UK police agencies. This was the first time the child rescue alarm had been sounded nationwide. 14 hours after April's disappearance, the media began pressuring the police to release every detail of their investigation. The police faced criticism for their handling of the case. But it can be argued that this was unfair. They had responded swiftly, organizing search parties and searching for April throughout the night, doing everything possible given the challenging weather. Detective Superintendent Andy John led the investigation, keeping the public and media informed with regular updates. To aid the search, he established roadblocks where officers stopped and inspected every vehicle. Posters with April's photo were also distributed, aiming to spark anyone's memory that might help locate her. People living nearby and those from farther away had been sending reports to the police. Many of these reports mentioned the same name, Mark Bridger. Several locals identified Mark as matching describe April's kidnapper. He was known as a Land Rover driver with blue eyes and short facial hair, and notably, his car had a left-hand drive. Witnesses reported seeing Mark or his car near where April went missing. They found the last known address of Mark and multiple attempts to contact him. However, both Mark and April were not present at the address. Mark has never encountered any legal problems before. However, some local residents reported that he had participated in the initial nighttime search for April. Due to the large number of volunteers, it was not possible to verify this information. The authorities shifted their focus to locating Mark. They deployed helicopters to scour the area from above while officers searched all locations on the ground. They discovered that Mark had recently moved into a cottage called Mount Pleasant. When police arrived, they found no one living there and there were no cars there. They entered the cottage and called out April's name, but there was no response. It was initially unclear whether Mark had been evading authorities. At 4:30, police announced that Mark had been captured. Before, a police aircraft spotted him walking his dog on a country road near April's family home. He appeared to have altered his appearance by shaving his head and beard. Police helicopters led patrol cars to Mark's location. When stopped by officers, he provided his name without attempting to hide his identity. The officer then inquired about April's whereabouts, to which he responded that it was an accident, claiming he had unintentionally crushed her with his car and was now unaware of her location. During the arrest, Mark became visibly emotional. The arresting officers informed him of his rights, stating, "You do not have to say anything, but anything you say may be used as evidence." Strangely enough, Mark was eager to talk, even though he didn't have to. The officers reminded him that he was free to speak or not. Mark told them he had been searching for April on foot day and night. His car, a left-hand drive Land Rover Discovery, was in the garage. He denied abducting her and said he tried to revive her but panicked. He only learned her name that morning from the news. He wished he could remember where he left her, saying she was lifeless on the seat. He apologized to April's family. Meanwhile, in April's hometown, a large-scale search operation was underway. Police, canine teams, volunteers, and mountain rescuers scoured the Welsh countryside, but couldn't find her. Volunteers numbering in the hundreds from all over the country worked relentlessly, usually only sleep for a few hours, then continue searching. The police received over 600 offers of help, with many suggesting areas to search. Thanks to local expertise, over 20 areas were thoroughly checked. At this stage, detectives had Mark Bridger in custody and were interrogating him. Mark immediately began discussing the incidents of that day. He stated that he had no knowledge of April's whereabouts and described his activities, which included attending a parent-teacher conference at his daughter's school and then parking near his girlfriend's house, also which is close to April's parents' house. Mark admitted to consuming a few drinks and seeing two girls riding their bicycles. He remembered the dark-haired girl riding behind his car, and claimed that when he looked for the other girl, she was nowhere to be seen, but then suddenly her bike appeared. Mark admitted that he had been nearby at the time of the incident and April was hit by his car while she was riding her bike. He claimed he was drunk at the time. He stated that he didn't intend to harm April, but knew he had made a mistake. He said he took her into his car to rush her to the hospital. Mark described April's condition, said her face had turned pale, and her lips were purple. He acknowledged that his actions led to her death and mentioned that he knew her parents. However, after this admission, Mark's memory became unclear. Despite initially being open about his involvement, but he couldn't recall what he did with April's body after she died. Even though the police tried to interrogate Mark many times, but they were hindered when he suddenly claimed to have amnesia. He repeatedly stated that he was in his house, couldn't find April, and wouldn't have abandoned her. Initially, Mark was cooperative and honest with the police, but they began to doubt his sincerity when he claimed memory loss at the exact moment April went missing and suspected that he might be withholding information. The police decided to tread carefully, they aware that using an aggressive tone during questioning might lead Mark to refuse further cooperation. The police obtained a statement from April's 7-year-old friend, claiming that April voluntarily got into Mark's car, appeared happy, and was smiling. It is unlikely that someone would deceive a child in this way without reason or motive. However, the police also had a witness who contradicted this account. The witness reported that April entered the Land Rover through the driver's door, which is actually the left-hand side door in the UK. This contradicts Mark's story, suggesting that his testimony may be fabricated. When confronted with this new information, Mark became uncomfortable. Despite this, he maintained his original story and showed no signs of wavering under various lines of questioning. Detectives employed a novel approach by consulting Dr. Joe Sullivan, a renowned expert in criminal body language and behavior. Dr. Sullivan's involvement went beyond analyzing Mark's interviews. He also visited his home to gather information for a psychological profile. What he found was astounding. Mark's home contained an assortment of disturbing items, including knives, handcuffs, and a shotgun, some of which were concealed, while others were openly displayed. Furthermore, he worked at a slaughterhouse. According to Dr. Sullivan's assessment, Mark was a fantasist who identified himself with fictional characters like Rambo, indicating a disconnection from reality. Despite Dr. Sullivan's advice, the police took a paternalistic approach with Mark. However, he stuck to his story. The police then relied on forensic specialists to thoroughly search his house for evidence. The search team found small specks of blood in the restroom, but at that point, it was unclear whose blood it was. It was possible that the blood came from he cutting himself while shaving. The police sent the samples to the laboratory, but it would take up to 24 hours to get the results. Dr. Sullivan warned the police that Mark was unlikely to feel empathy or guilt about his actions. Although he might try to pretend otherwise, but Dr. Sullivan believed that he lacked these emotions. As a result, Dr. Sullivan advised the police that appealing to his better nature would be pointless, as he didn't have one. The police cannot expect Mark to be remorseful, sympathetic, or confess his guilt. The police took Dr. Sullivan's advice seriously and redetained Mark on suspicion of murder. This sudden turn of caught Bridger off guard, and him pale. Furthermore, explicit child photos were discovered on his laptop, leading to his second arrest for possessing offensive images of children. As the investigation intensified, Mark suspected the police had more information than they were letting on. Meanwhile, April's parents were informed on Thursday, 3 days after her disappearance, that the police had shifted their focus from finding her alive to investigating a murder case. They had to break the devastating news to their children that they had lost a sister. Receiving news that their daughter was presumed dead, but her body hasn't been found yet, was a difficult pill to swallow. The police kept this information from Mark, but they also advised the volunteers who had been tirelessly searching for April to stand down and let the experts handle the situation. However, this suggestion was met with resistance from the hundreds of volunteers, many of whom were in tears as they left the site. On Friday, 4 days after April vanished, police search teams continued their search for clues. There was no evidence that Mark killed April, according to forensic experts. A thorough examination of his Land Rover revealed no marks, no blood, no hair, and no skin. This was despite Mark's claim that there should have been signs of April's injuries, such as scratches on the bumper or blood or hair inside the car. He tried to explain by saying he didn't see any blood on April after his car hit her. Although April was run over, she didn't appear to have any open wounds. However, Mark's story was about to be exposed as a fabrication. On Friday night at 6:15 p.m., the lab contacted the detectives. The results of the DNA comparison between April's toothbrush and the blood spatters found in Mark's restroom. They matched. Additionally, DNA evidence was found on his fleece collar and jogging bottoms. After gathering enough evidence, the police charged April. They found photos on his laptop, which they showed him during questioning. The photos depicted minors being sexualized, exploited, and manipulated. However, Mark denied any wrongdoing, claiming he didn't enjoy things, despite being shown the images and asked to describe them. The photos were disturbing and something no reasonable person would have. Mark also denied searching for explicit websites for personal gratification, even when confronted with his internet search history. After 3.5 days in custody, the police's 96-hour questioning period was almost over. They made one last attempt to get Mark to tell the truth. The decision to press charges now rested with the Crown Prosecution Service. The police questioned Mark about April's whereabouts and whether he intended to murder her. They pointed out that no blood was found on the bathroom walls at his house, yet a full DNA profile of April was discovered. Mark claimed that if he had blood on his hands and didn't dry them, he might have accidentally flicked blood onto the walls. However, this contradicted his previous statement that he hadn't experienced any issues with blood for a week prior. Despite the inconsistencies, Mark stuck to his story, stating that some blood must have been present, even though he had previously claimed there was no blood on him or April, or in the car. Mark was subjected to intense police questioning regarding the images found on his laptop. The police were struggling to find ways to get him to reveal the truth. When asked if he was using the photographs for self-gratification, he denied it. However, he did suggest that a buildup of sexual frustration might have contributed to his actions on the morning in question. Mark's composure eventually began to crack under the pressure of questioning. He became agitated, raised his voice, and started using profanity. It was clear that he took issue with being labeled a pedophile. After a lengthy and challenging process, the police were finally able to uncover Mark's true nature. They were convinced they had the right person and had already submitted the case to the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS. The CPS subsequently authorized the police to charge Mark with the abduction and murder of April Jones. When informed of the charges, Mark showed no emotion or remorse. As he arrived at court in a prison van, everyone threw objects and shouted obscenities at him. Over the next 2 weeks, forensic investigators found more and more blood traces from April at Mark's house. The fireplace also contained several broken bones, but they were so badly decomposed that it was impossible to confirm if they belonged to April. On May 30th, 2013, a jury convicted 47-year-old Mark Bridger of kidnapping and murdering April Jones. Judge Mr. Justice Griffith Williams described Mark as a chronic liar and a pedophile who had long harbored fantasies about young girls. However, the judge believed that he was not specifically targeting April, but rather was pursuing a young girl in general. Unfortunately, April became the poor victim of Mark's actions. Mr. Justice Griffith Williams immediately sentenced Mark Bridger to life in prison, with the details of his sentence to remain undisclosed to the public. Mark claimed that April's death was a tragic accident, resulting from his car hitting her. However, his credibility had been lost long before his trial in the eyes of both law enforcement and the judicial system. Given the overwhelming evidence against him, Mark was unable to escape justice. April was a young girl who was playing outside with her friend. Then she was targeted by an individual with a twisted mind. April's family was relieved that Mark would spend the rest of his life in prison, unable to harm any more children, despite their overwhelming grief. However, April's remains were never found after the trial. While 17 bone fragments were discovered in Mark's house, but it was impossible to point out that they belonged to April. April's passing has left an unfillable void in the hearts of her loved ones. It is hoped that her family and friends can find some way to rebuild their lives. A funeral service for April was held in her hometown on April 26, 2013. May April Jones rest in peace. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Zoe Sarnacki. Zoe Sarnacki was born on March 25, 1991, in Portland, Maine, a city in the northwest of the United States. She was raised in a loving family consisting of her parents, John and Linda Sarnacki, her brother Gregory, and two half-sisters, with whom she still maintains a close relationship. Zoe's father, John, worked as a construction worker and provided well for the family. As a result, Zoe was exposed to a variety of creative activities from a young age, which led to her strong interest in art. Her family also loved animals and had 5 cats at home. As Zoe grew older, she became increasingly curious and developed a strong desire to travel and experience different cultures. She also adopted a vegan lifestyle, choosing to consume only plant-based foods and avoiding animal products. Zoe was raised in an ecologically conscious culture that prioritized animal welfare, environmental conservation, and healthy living. This culture played a major role in shaping her personality. By the time she started high school in 2005, Zoe had already built up a large group of friends who considered her to be cheerful, enthusiastic, and friendly. However, things changed in 2008 when Zoe made a shocking decision on her 17th birthday. She decided to drop out of school. Her friends and family were surprised by the decision, and her parents were particularly unhappy with her choice. Despite this sudden change, Zoe's former classmates remember her fondly, describing her as a kind and loving person. A few months after leaving school, Zoe found a job at a local bakery and cafe called Bagel Works, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. On March 25, 2009, Zoe's 18th birthday, she was looking forward to getting a tattoo on one of her arms. Inspired by the works of Austrian artist Gustav Klimt, she had a clear idea of the design she wanted. Zoe went to a tattoo parlor in the Old Port area. There, she met 27-year-old tattoo artist Chad Gurney. They quickly formed a bond, and after just a few days of meeting, Zoe agreed to start a romantic relationship with him. Notably, their 9-year age gap did not stop her from pursuing a relationship with Chad. Chad had a unique background. Born and raised in Maine, he attended Wells High School, where he was known as the goalie for lacrosse, a competitive sport played between two teams using a small rubber ball and a long-handled stick. After graduating from high school, Chad moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, to attend Liberty University, an institution known for its ties to the famous evangelical pastor Jerry Falwell. Chad has many tattoos on his body, most of which depict aliens. One design stands out, a gray alligator tattoo. In the context of tattoos, alien designs can mean two things. One is that the person believes in the existence of beings from other planets, and two is that it reflects the personality of the person wearing the tattoo, who is trying to say that they do not fit into this world, that they are different from others, and that they are unique. As for the reptile tattoo, it is said to symbolize danger and hostility, a predator to be avoided. Before moving to Portland in 2005, Chad had a difficult time recovering from a near-fatal car accident in Alabama that had occurred 4 years earlier. On a trip to a lacrosse game, a local van carrying players and coaches was hit from behind by a car and pushed into the oncoming lane, where it collided with a large truck. The impact threw Chad from the van and he nearly lost his leg. He has undergone approximately 20 surgeries due to severe head injuries. Chad underwent a psychiatric evaluation following his accident, which revealed that he had cognitive impairments. These impairments affected his speech, memory, and mathematical reasoning. After the accident, Chad received a large settlement from a lawsuit, allowing him to become financially independent. Years later, in 2007, Chad sought treatment for anxiety and depression. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and organic personality disorder. In 2009, Chad traveled to Hawaii alone, where he met Zoe. Chad and Zoe began dating and decided to have an open relationship, which meant they were free to see other people. After starting their relationship, Chad continued to travel. In May 2009, he took a weekend trip to Vancouver, a city in Canada. When Chad returned to Portland, Zoe confessed to him remorsefully that while he was away, she had had an affair with another man and had sex with him. At first, Chad did not seem to mind the affair, as they had previously agreed to maintain an open relationship. However, after this confession, Chad changed and began to insist that Zoe quit her job and go with him to Thailand. Zoe refused him, not knowing the devastating consequences that would follow. On May 25, 2009, Zoe came to Chad's apartment and took a nap because she was tired. While she was sleeping, Chad violently attacked her. He grabbed her by the neck, hit her in the head, and strangled her until she died. After Zoe died, Chad continued to commit crimes, including having sex with her body and then decapitating her. After committing the crime, Chad showered, dressed and drove to a nearby gas station to fill up the tank, showing a disturbing calmness after committing such a heinous act. Chad returned to his apartment, where he poured petrol over Zoe, creating a trail of fuel leading to the front door. He then set it on fire. Before the fire spread throughout the apartment, Chad quickly grabbed a backpack filled with items for his trip to Thailand, a laptop and a handgun. After the apartment was completely engulfed, Chad went to an ATM to withdraw cash and then checked into the Old Orchard Beach Motel, where he relaxed in the hot tub. A 911 call was made and emergency services were alerted to the fire at Chad's apartment. Police arrived quickly on the scene and extinguished the fire. Upon entering the building, they discovered a horrific scene. Inside the charred ruins of the apartment was a badly burned body surrounded by crosses and other religious objects. A neighbor called Chad to report that his house was on fire. Chad replied that he was out of town, headed to his hometown of Lewiston, and quickly ended the call. 2 days later, on May 26, Chad spoke to his best friend and confessed to killing Zoe, calmly explaining the events that led up to it. He appeared rational, claiming that he was exhausted from the pain and had lost control of himself. While driving through the streets of Portland, Chad carelessly ran a red light and was pulled over by a city police officer. During the stop, Chad claimed that a previous accident in 2005 had left him with mental health issues, and he asked his friend to explain this to the police over the phone. After a conversation with his friend and the police, Chad voluntarily went to the police station and confessed to Zoe's murder. The police then seized his belongings. A forensic examination of Chad's computer discovered a video of the gruesome scene on his hard drive, titled "Woman Half Decapitated Over Suspicion of Adultery." At least if she cheated, she wouldn't do it again. This incriminating evidence was later presented to the court. On Wednesday, May 27th, Zoe's high school held a moment of silence during class to honor her. Before lunch, teachers and students were informed of the tragic incident. Later that day, Christine Koo, Zoe's half-sister, issued a statement to local media on behalf of the family. She stressed that this was no ordinary murder, as the perpetrator, Chad, had committed many heinous acts. Christine reported that the police had informed her of the shocking events surrounding Zoe's murder. According to them, Chad had brutally attacked Zoe in a fit of rage, sexually assaulted her, and then set her body on fire. He then calmly went to a motel and got into a hot tub. A week after Zoe's tragic death, on June 2, 2009, a vigil was held in front of Chad's former apartment building. The vigil served as a moment of comfort for Zoe's loved ones and friends. Many strangers, shocked and outraged by the brutal crime, attended. It is estimated that more than 150 people attended the vigil and memorial service for Zoe. Candles and flowers were placed on the steps of the building where her life was tragically ended in memory of Zoe. Zoe's father, John, and her half-sister, Courtney, attended the vigil and were deeply moved by the outpouring of support from so many people. During the investigation, police interviewed Chad's friends and acquaintances, who said he was on a spiritual quest and had plans to travel to Thailand to study Eastern religions. His apartment was said to be decorated with many spiritual artifacts and symbols. Chad's personality seemed to be a mixture of contradictions. On the one hand, he was known to be kind and charming, often giving small gifts to those around him. He also expressed a desire to use the money he received from an accident to help humanity. However, Chad also had a harder side, with tattoos on his arms and a reputation for provocative and confrontational behavior. Those who knew Chad noted that his behavior often pushed people away. Robert Collins, a 24-year-old chef who knew Chad, recalled that people would often ignore him and turn away when Chad came to parties. Chad also confided to Robert that the only thing he truly sympathized with was pain, which was further emphasized by the word pain tattooed on his knuckles. Police and prosecutors have made great efforts to gather every piece of information about this brutal crime. Steve Weir, who rented an apartment from Chad in 2006, was also questioned. He mentioned religious paintings and artifacts in Chad's apartment and said Chad told him he was interested in theology but did not practice it. Watson Atkinson, a tattoo parlor owner in Portland, recalled a conversation with Chad in which Chad shared his plans to use his accident compensation to find direction in his life. However, Watson's impression of Chad was disturbing because Chad seemed to focus on teenage girls, which worried him so much that he forbade his 16-year-old daughter from communicating with Chad, and also repeatedly warned Zoe to stay away from him. An investigation into Chad's background revealed his medical history and mental health diagnoses, but subsequent evaluations by multiple psychologists during his incarceration found no evidence of delusions or hallucinations. In conversations with professionals, Chad expressed strong emotions related to his perception of Zoe's infidelity, which he claimed had frustrated him. According to court documents, he claimed that he was fed up with all his girlfriend's infidelity. He began thinking about killing Zoe when she confessed her infidelity to him. As the trial began, a 127-minute tape of the police interview was played. The tape was recorded 12 hours after the crime and featured Chad speaking to Denham police. In the recording, Chad described his relationship with Zoe as extremely close, with Zoe sometimes staying at his apartment for up to a week. He denied any history of fighting between them and believed they were destined for each other. Chad also admitted to taking Zoe's life, describing her as the most beautiful girl he had ever met and feeling he had a responsibility to tell the truth about what had happened. During his conversation with the police, Chad remained calm and apologized frequently, breaking down in tears several times. He recounted the events of May 25, 2009, saying that Zoe was napping. Chad said that he approached her and began to strangle her, causing Zoe to defend herself and scream for him to stop. According to Chad, when Zoe resisted, he hit her in the head and continued to strangle her until she lost consciousness and stopped breathing. He then detailed the next terrifying actions he performed on her body. Chad revised his testimony, saying that he used 3 knives instead of a samurai sword. He described how he placed a cross between his legs and recounted his actions while Zoe's body burned in the apartment. Chad called himself a terrible person. When questioned about the beheading, Chad claimed that he was trying to turn Zoe's death into a ritual of forgiveness. Chad said he felt haunted on the day of the murder and that everything in his life seemed to have gone dark. He described himself as a primitive person, acting on instinct for hours, which led him to commit the heinous act. The recording of the interrogation, which became key evidence in Cumberland County Superior Court, was heard in its entirety by Judge Roland Cole during the first trial. It was revealed that Chad faced serious consequences, at least 25 years in prison, or possibly life in prison. However, if his mental disorder was recognized, he could be sent to a psychiatric facility in Austin. During the 2011 trial, it was determined that Chad had strangled the victim in a fit of rage. The question remains whether Chad would agree to this testimony, since he had waived his right to a jury trial. Prosecutors argued that Chad, a former Liberty University student and lacrosse champion, was fully aware of his actions. To support this claim, they presented testimony from a psychiatrist and a psychologist, both of whom agreed that Chad understood the gravity of his actions and decided to violently kill his girlfriend. Chad's defense team continued to emphasize his mental health struggles, arguing that he was out of control. On January 11, 2012, Chad's attorneys filed a motion with the Supreme Court to exclude from the case evidence found on Chad's personal computer at the time of his arrest. This evidence included a gruesome video in which he demonstrated how to decapitate an unfaithful woman. The defense argued that the video was inadmissible as evidence. Ultimately, nearly 3 years after the crime, Chad Gurney, then 30, was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of Zoe Sarnacki and an additional 25 years for arson. The judge ruled that the sentences would run consecutively. Chad's lawyers challenged the sentence, but their appeal was rejected. Zoe's family members were disappointed that Chad did not receive a life sentence. During sentencing, the presiding judge said that Chad had a distorted view of the world, but the court's main concern was whether the defendant knew that his actions were wrong. Chad's lawyer, Sarah Churchill, presented her case to the Supreme Court, claiming that Chad's concussion and other injuries from the 2005 accident had left her client in a state of confusion and delusion. She argued that the judge erred in finding Chad guilty, particularly that the search warrant should not have included his smartphone, laptop, and social media pages. Sarah Churchill argued that the court should have focused more on evidence of Chad's psychosis and unstable mental state at the time of the crime, rather than evidence found on his digital devices. The Deputy Attorney General told the court that Chad was accused of killing Zoe as an act of revenge for having an affair with another man. The Deputy Attorney General explained that a video appeared to show Chad sexually assaulting Zoe as punishment for an infidelity that he considered a betrayal. The Deputy Attorney General clarified that the prosecution did not use any information from social media to build its case against Chad. He argued that the evidence convincingly demonstrated that the defendant was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime. After the verdict was announced, Kathy Kozev, Zoe's aunt, shared with reporters that throughout the trial she felt extremely distressed as she witnessed Chad's sight and voice, taking her back to the traumatic final moments of her niece's life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel, Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Megan Lowski. Megan Lowski lived with her family in Portsmouth, Virginia, a bustling seaport town. Her family included her father, Chris Short, a Navy officer, her mother, Angela, and 2 other siblings. Chris Short had been transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth after a year stationed at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Chris's family felt relieved when they moved there. Megan Lowski, 16 years old, was the oldest in the family. When her family moved, she quickly signed up for dance classes. Megan had a deep passion for dance and showed outstanding talent from the beginning. She started with ballet and then expanded into many different genres. Megan's mother described her as a beautiful, friendly, and talented girl. Megan adapted quickly to her new learning environment at Woodrow Wilson High School. She had an attractive personality and easily made friends with her classmates. Although she attended a prestigious high school that specialized in dance, Megan wanted to attend a regular high school so she could hang out with friends in her neighborhood. She was described as vivacious and kind, with a natural tendency to connect with people. On Thursday, April 10, 2008, Megan woke up early to go to school. She chatted with her mother about the upcoming test before going to class. After saying goodbye to Angela, Megan went to school. Angela had no idea that this would be the last time she would see her daughter alive. Megan's school day ended early, and she went home. Angela had told Megan that she expected Megan's call when she got home. Upon arriving, Megan left a voicemail detailing how her day went, reassuring Angela that she had returned safely, and ending by telling Angela she loved her. Then she continued to prepare lunch for herself. However, things took a terrifying and disturbing turn around 4 p.m. Megan's stepfather, Chris, returned home and found the door open. Although he didn't worry at first, he knew Megan had been warned about leaving the door open, so he trusted that she wouldn't leave it unattended like that. He called her name, but there was only silence. When he entered the kitchen, he was faced with a horrifying sight: Megan lying motionless on the floor. Chris quickly called the police and reported the incident. Local detective Doug Funkhauser suddenly received an alarming call reporting the murder of a young girl in town. Immediately, he rushed to the location of the crime, Roberts Court in Portsmouth. When he approached the scene of the crime, he saw horrifying signs. The bloodstains on the door handle were very clear. When he entered the kitchen, he discovered a gruesome scene. The body of a young girl lay on the floor, her body seriously injured. Megan had suffered multiple stab wounds on her back, neck, face, and throat, and her mouth was sealed with tape. For Detective Doug, this case was one of the most brutal cases he had ever investigated. An initial investigation revealed no signs of forced entry. However, a leaf found inside the home matched a bush outside a first-floor window, suggesting that the killer may have entered through that window. In the upstairs bedroom, signs of a struggle were evident on the bed. Megan's underwear was on the floor, and a box of duct tape was found under the left corner of the bed, appearing to match the tape used to bind Megan's hands and face. Forensic experts found blood on the tape and other items, which were collected for further analysis, including pillows, sheets, and blankets. Additional forensic testing indicated that the bedroom was the scene of the sexual assault, as traces of the killer's semen were found on Megan's comforter and underwear. These findings suggested that Megan had been assaulted in the bedroom before the attack downstairs. Megan was found with a large number of injuries, 43 stab wounds, including 11 post-mortem. The forensic team also reported that Megan was naked from the waist down, with her hands bound behind her back with duct tape. The murder weapon was determined to be a missing kitchen knife. Investigators later found the knife in the sink and determined that the initial attack had occurred in the bedroom, but Megan had somehow escaped down the stairs. Investigators discovered that the perpetrator left footprints during the crime and then washed his hands in the kitchen sink. A second knife used in the crime was discovered in a nearby drain. Detectives quickly searched the neighborhood for witnesses, but no one provided any useful information. The killer appeared to have escaped undetected during the day. After the shock of their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly alerted the police to their suspicions regarding the identity of the killer. They suspected an old acquaintance with a troubled past and believed he may be involved in the case. This person is Robert Hickey, a former colleague of Chris's in the Navy who had sexually assaulted Megan when she was 16. Chris and Robert had worked together as technicians and had become close friends, often inviting Robert and his family to their home. Megan's behavior changed dramatically after the abuse. She became withdrawn, and her grades began to decline. Chris noticed the change and asked her what was wrong, but she was initially reluctant to talk about it. Eventually, Megan confided in Chris, revealing that Robert had been sexually assaulting her in secret. Chris was furious and immediately cut off ties with the Hickeys. He also reported the abuse to the authorities. Around the same time, Megan's parents filed a lawsuit against Robert, just 5 months before she was murdered. The trial is pending, and Megan is expected to testify against him. Robert has a lot at stake, including his reputation and his freedom. Megan expressed concern that Robert might try to harm her to prevent her from testifying, and unfortunately, it appears that her fears have come true. When police searched Robert's home, they did not find any direct evidence linking him to Megan's murder. However, upon closer inspection of his computer, they discovered that he had attempted to erase the hard drive. Investigators were able to recover a recently deleted file containing sexually explicit images of minors. This discovery led to Robert being charged with possession of child pornography and becoming the prime suspect in Megan's murder. He was brought in for questioning, and authorities hope that he will confess to the crime. Robert was visibly nervous throughout the interview, but he insisted that he was at the Navy base on the day of Megan's murder. He denied any involvement and claimed he had not left the base. However, after verifying his alibi with his colleagues, the police discovered a gap in his timeline, raising the possibility that he might have been involved in the murder. The police obtained surveillance footage from the base but found no evidence that Robert had left. Despite this, he remained a suspect. To investigate further, a DNA sample was taken from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene. The results showed no match, ruling out Robert as the killer. This discovery left the police without any leads or suspects, leaving them frustrated. They then turned their attention to Chris, who had discovered Megan's body. After taking a DNA sample from Chris, he was quickly cleared. Megan's family members, including her younger brother, Corey, were also ruled out as suspects. The autopsy revealed that the murder was extremely brutal, indicating that the perpetrator had used extreme violence against Megan. Given Megan's popularity and gentle nature, it was difficult to narrow the investigation based on hostile relationships. This made the identity of the killer even more mysterious. The investigation into Megan's case did not produce any suspects. Detectives focused on Megan's life at school and interviewed each of her friends. Megan's best friend was interviewed but did not provide any useful information. Police then spoke to other friends and acquaintances from Woodrow Wilson High School and learned that Megan had dated a few people but nothing too serious. Although these men did not appear to be suspects, police asked them to provide DNA samples as a precaution. Meanwhile, experts retested DNA from the crime scene, which suggested that the killer was likely an African American male. For 6 months, no major developments were made, but that changed when a helpful classmate provided valuable information, a list of boys with whom Megan had occasionally flirted. Police looked through the list and found that they had spoken to all of the boys on the list, except for one, a 17-year-old named Robert Lee Barnes. Megan and Robert Barnes were both in the performing arts program at Churchill High School. Megan confided in her friend that she believed Robert might have a crush on her. At school, Robert was considered an excellent violinist, and as a student, he had always earned good grades, exhibited exemplary behavior, and had no disciplinary problems. As one of Megan's friends, Robert visited Megan's home several times, showing respectful behavior during these visits, and Megan's parents were very fond of him. When the police questioned Robert about Megan, he described her as a kind and pleasant person and was shocked that someone would want to harm her. He mentioned that he and Megan had attended shows together and occasionally hung out. However, towards the end of the interview, Robert's demeanor changed when he was asked to provide a DNA sample. Unlike Megan's other classmates, who were cooperative with the request, Robert hesitated and then refused, which aroused the suspicion of the investigators. Robert said that his mother did not allow the DNA test, but the police informed him that his parents' permission was not required because he was almost 18 years old. However, Robert still refused. This refusal made the investigators feel uncomfortable and suspicious that something was wrong with Robert. Therefore, after the interview ended, the investigators suggested that he talk to his mother and try again. The day after the initial investigation, Robert contacted the authorities to request a meeting. When asked if he had obtained his mother's permission, he replied that he had not, but he had given them a piece of his chewing gum as a DNA sample. Robert removed the gum from his mouth, placed it in a rubber glove, and gave it to the investigators. Despite this, the investigators remained suspicious of Robert. The DNA lab then contacted the detective to inquire about the sample's source. After confirming that Robert had indeed placed the gum in the glove, the lab questioned whether he had been continuously monitored while providing the gum. This investigation was prompted by the surprising fact that the DNA on the gum matched that of a woman. It turned out that Robert had switched the gum he was chewing with another piece before handing it to the investigators. On October 23, 2008, Robert was called in for questioning again, this time with his mother. When confronted with the DNA findings, Robert was asked about the chewing gum. He made a critical mistake by stating, "This happened on Thursday." Up until that point, none of the individuals interviewed by the police knew the exact date and time of the murder. When the officers pointed this out to Robert, he provided an implausible explanation. According to Robert, on that Thursday, Megan had asked him to visit her home. Upon his arrival, Robert claimed to have found Megan being held at gunpoint by a masked individual. The alleged attacker held the gun to Robert, forcing him to tie Megan up. Robert then fabricated a story that he had been compelled to sexually assault Megan. He further claimed that they all went downstairs, where the attacker stabbed Megan after obtaining a knife. Ultimately, Robert stated that the attacker had forced him to inflict an injury on himself to ensure his blood would be present at the crime scene. Robert fabricated a false story to portray himself as the victim and to explain away any incriminating evidence. However, the police did not believe his account. When presented with evidence of footprints found at the scene, the investigator asked Robert why only his footprints were found and not those of the person he claimed had attacked him. Robert's mother intervened, telling Robert to stop talking and asserting that Robert was a good and innocent person. The police then took a DNA sample from Robert. The DNA analysis showed a match between Robert's DNA and the DNA found at the crime scene. As a result, Robert Barnes was arrested for the murder of Megan Lowski. According to police, Robert likely broke into the house through a window that afternoon, surprising Megan in her bedroom. He then attacked her, and when she tried to escape downstairs, he chased her, stabbing her multiple times with a kitchen knife, even after she was dead. After the crime, Robert left the scene and continued his life as if nothing had happened. Investigators believe that Robert became unhealthily obsessed with Megan, who only wanted a friendship. When Robert's romantic advances were rejected, he turned to coercion, which led to a tragic end. In September 2009, Robert accepted a plea deal that allowed him to be tried as a juvenile, despite having just turned 18. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated sexual assault. As a result, Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and is currently serving his sentence at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Regardless of the motive behind Robert's actions, whether it was love, lust, bitterness, or the pain of rejection, none of these reasons justify his horrific crimes against the person he claimed to love and care for. Robert chose the path of destruction, taking the life of an innocent person and ruining his own life. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Heather Maples. Heather Nicole Maples was born on August 23, 1992, in Ocala, Florida. Her mother, Jennifer Hunter, had called Heather the storm baby because she had always been full of energy and courage, which had made many people jealous. In 2004, Jennifer Hunter gave birth to her second child. Heather had been very happy to welcome her younger brother Ryan into her life. However, Ryan was later diagnosed with developmental delays. Heather spent all her free time taking care of Ryan, helping him learn to talk, walk, and eat. In the following years, Heather showed her love and devotion to her younger brother. Until her graduation, she devoted all her time to Ryan. At the age of 22, Heather Maples decided to leave her hometown of Texas and start a new chapter in Tennessee, where she pursued her dream of becoming a psychologist. Heather's journey began when she received a call from her old classmate, Chaz. He had invited her to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where he was studying. Chaz believed that this had been the perfect place for Heather, where she could get a good opportunity to prepare for college. Heather accepted the invitation and went to Murfreesboro in January 2015. There, she started a new life and her relationship with Chaz grew stronger and they became lovers. With the support of her best friend Kelsey, Heather found an office job in the area where they lived. She had to balance her work in college preparation, but everything seemed to be going well. However, Heather's relationship with Chaz did not last long. Soon, they decided to break up. Chaz moved away, leaving Heather alone in Murfreesboro. In early August, Heather had been excited to call her mother to share the great news. Heather had been accepted to college, and her mother had been so proud. On a normal morning at her real estate brokerage firm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on August 7, 2015, Kelsey Price had arrived at work and begun her daily routine. However, she had noticed that her friend and co-worker, Heather, had been running late as usual. Kelsey had decided to call Heather to wake her up but had received no response. Remembering Heather's plans for the night before, Kelsey hadn't been worried because Heather had asked her to pick her up if she overslept or didn't answer the phone. So, Kelsey had decided to go to Heather's apartment to wake her up. Heather's apartment had been in the same complex where they had worked. When she arrived, Kelsey had found the front door unlocked and had gone inside. She had found Heather lying on her bed, sleeping on her stomach, wearing only a crop top and no underwear. At first, Kelsey had thought Heather had had a wild night, but when she had tried to wake her up and had gotten no response, she had begun to worry. Kelsey had tapped Heather's leg, but there had still been no response. When she had touched Heather's leg, Kelsey had noticed that her leg had been very cold and had felt terrified. Kelsey Price had left the apartment and immediately called 911. Emergency services had quickly arrived on the scene. Detective Tommy Massey had been one of the first to arrive at the crime scene. He and the forensic team had conducted a thorough search of the apartment. There, they had discovered that Heather had been brutally beaten, showing signs of torture and sexual assault. Heather's hair had been covered in blood and splattered against the walls. Detective Massey and his partner, Detective Maples, had recalled the case as a terrifying nightmare. Witnessing this heartbreaking scene had been difficult, especially since they had shared the same last name as the victim, Heather Maples. Detectives had quickly realized that the case could be related to Heather's personal life. At that time, most of her friends had been suspected because they had all been close to Heather. In particular, her apartment had shown no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the attacker might have been invited in by Heather. While examining the scene, detectives had discovered several important pieces of evidence. Among them, an unidentified DNA sample and a hair that hadn't belonged to Heather had both been sent for analysis. In addition, a bloody fingerprint on the right side of Heather's bed had been a very important clue. According to Detective Massey, if someone had intentionally created a fingerprint, the trace wouldn't have been so clear. This fingerprint had also been sent for analysis in order to find the perpetrator. Heather's cell phone had been found in her apartment, but without a password, the police couldn't access the phone. At this time, Kelsey had played an important role in helping the police with the phone and also in notifying Heather's mother of her death. Detective Massey had hoped to get more information about Heather from her friend Kelsey Price. Kelsey had said that the relationship between Heather and Chaz had been quite tense because Chaz had had anger management problems and had been sometimes too aggressive with Heather. Therefore, Heather had decided to end this relationship. Having received important information, the police had decided to investigate Chaz immediately. However, an unexpected development had occurred when a young man named Michael had appeared at the crime scene. He had had the key to Heather's apartment and said he had met Heather at a bar. Michael had said that he hadn't had sex with Heather. Michael had testimony that the evening before Heather had died, she had called him and invited him to dinner. After dinner, Michael had gone home and Heather had gone to a local bar with friends. Heather had called Michael at 11:40 to ask for help because she had been having trouble at a bar. A man named Otavio had been bothering her and making her uncomfortable. Michael had agreed to go to the bar to help and then had driven Heather home. When they had arrived at the house, Heather had called Michael and asked him to buy some things, including biscuits, gravy, eggs, and sausage. After buying those things, Michael had driven Heather home and seen her go up the stairs. That had been the last time he had seen Heather, at approximately 2:30 a.m. on August 7th. During questioning, Michael had explained that he had had Heather's key and often unlocked the front door for her. He had also said that Heather's front door had often been left unlocked because she hadn't had a pocket for her keys. Investigators had taken Michael's fingerprints and DNA, but the results of the analysis had shown that they hadn't matched the fingerprints and DNA found at the crime scene. After Michael had been cleared as a suspect, investigators had turned their attention to the man who had been with Heather that night, Otavio. Kelsey's help in unlocking Heather's cell phone had raised the police's suspicions of Otavio. Detectives had discovered that Heather had texted Otavio, a friend of hers, inviting him to her apartment just hours before she was found dead. When asked about Otavio, a friend of Heather's had said, "I didn't know much about him. He seemed like a really nice guy. He was funny." When asked why Heather had sent this friend a photo of herself and Otavio, the friend had been unclear. However, when questioned further, the friend had explained that Otavio had been more aggressive than usual at the bar, and Heather had been taken by surprise. She had not been prepared for this. Detectives had decided to speak to Otavio to get his side of the story. Otavio had said he had been hanging out with Heather. Otavio and Heather had had some tequila and then had gone to the gym for a while. When asked about the photo of Otavio and Heather, Otavio had said it had been taken before they left for the gym. The photo had been taken by Heather and posted on Snapchat. The detectives had immediately realized that Otavio had known nothing about Heather's death. But what if he had been involved in the case? Meanwhile, the interrogation had continued. The police had said that Heather had texted him and asked him to come to her house. However, Otavio had denied it. When asked about Heather's late-night text, Ottavio had said that she had texted him around 2:30 but that he had fallen asleep and only saw the text the next morning. The detectives had escalated their questioning of Ottavio with a harsh interrogation method. They had told him that people had seen him at Heather's apartment, that there had been surveillance footage of him, and that there had been pictures of him with Heather. They had said that Ottavio had gone to Heather's apartment after she had texted him to come back, and then something had happened. They had also told him that there had been strange DNA all over Heather and that it would be compared to his DNA. Ottavio had been shocked by what he had heard. He had seemed genuinely clueless about what had happened to Heather. After questioning, he had agreed to a DNA test, believing that it would clear his name. The results had proved him right, as the DNA found at the crime scene did not match his, so the police had eliminated Ottavio as a suspect. Detectives had continued to investigate, reviewing surveillance footage and carefully examining every detail provided by witnesses, but it still had no leads on the case. On the 9th day of the investigation, Detective Massey had been about to leave the office late at night when he had received an important call from a forensic lab director. The call had brought the answer Massey had been waiting for regarding the bloody fingerprints found on Heather's bed. The prints had been matched to a young man named Brandon Bowling, who had a fingerprint record from a previous job at a company. While questioning Brandon, Detective Massey had asked Brandon how he had known Heather. Brandon had replied that they had met at the gym. Massey had continued by asking Brandon when exactly he had met Heather. It had been clear that Detective Massey had been taking a lighthearted approach to the interview, wanting to give Brandon a chance to explain what had happened that night. After hours of questioning Brandon, he admitted that he had last been to Heather's apartment in July and had never seen her again. However, the police produced evidence of his fingerprints on Heather's bed, which matched his own. Since the fingerprints collected from Heather's house were fresh, the detectives believed that Brandon was lying. Apparently, Brandon had some secrets and was hiding them, which raised suspicions about him. Brandon seemed to realize that all the evidence was against him and that he could be arrested, but he continued to deny any involvement in Heather's death. After questioning, the investigators asked Brandon to provide a DNA sample, claiming that if he was innocent, the test results would prove it. Brandon agreed and hoped to be released from police custody, but that did not happen. Investigators asked the court for permission to access Brandon's phone to track his movements, calls, and texts on the night of the murder. When the court granted permission, they discovered a video on Brandon's phone that shocked even the most experienced detectives. In the video, Heather's room was recorded, capturing everything from intimate behavior to beatings. Heather was still alive at the time of the recording. As a result, Brandon Richmond Bowling was arrested. In February 2018, Brandon pleaded guilty to assaulting Heather Maples. Consequently, he was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole. During the trial, Heather's mother, Jennifer, made a strong impression with her emotional speech. She announced that she forgave Brandon Bowling for the crimes he had committed against her family. After the trial ended, Jennifer met Brandon Bowling's mother in the hallway. There, she expressed her sympathy and shared the woman's pain with a warm hug. She said that they both lost a loved one that day. Unfortunately, however, Brandon Bowling never revealed the real reason behind his actions, leaving many questions and thoughts about his motives. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Neha Varma. Megha Deshpande lived with her 21-year-old daughter, Ashlesha, and her 70-year-old mother, Rohini, in a luxurious neighborhood called Srinagar in Indore. This city known for consistently ranking as one of the cleanest in India. The fact that they resided in Srinagar, an area predominantly inhabited by the wealthy, suggested that the Deshpande family was financially well off. Megha worked for a multi-level marketing (MLM) company for a considerable time. MLM is also referred to as network marketing, direct selling, and pyramid selling. To understand how an MLM business works, imagine a pyramid structure. At the top is the company owner. When the owner recruits two individuals and they join the company, it creates a network. These two individuals then recruit more people to join the company, and the process continues. The company generates profit from each new member or associate that joins, allowing the business owner to constantly earn income through the growth of their network. Before moving to Indore, Megha lived in Yuan, a city approximately 35 miles away, with her husband, Nanai Deshpande. However, due to his job as a bank manager, Nanai remained in Yuan, while Megha relocated to Indore with her daughter and mother a few months ago. Thanks to Nanai's stable job and Megha's successful career in the MLM company, the Megha's family has a stable financial situation and does not have to worry about money. In the neighborhood where Megha lives, people are very united, and it is also very safe with very little crime. Residents have always felt safe, and nothing unusual has ever happened there until June 13, 2011, when that all changed. On that day, no one in Megha's family left the house until noon, and no one heard their voices. A neighbor walked by Megha's house, and then she noticed a very strange thing. Footprints made of bloody stains led around the house, alarming her. She quickly notified the landlord, and the landlord then knocked on the door several times, but received no answer. Next, the landlord attempted to look inside through a window and was met with a very scary sight. 3 women were lying on the floor, their bodies covered in blood. Overcome with fear, he quickly alerted the police. The brutal murder of the Megha family members sent shockwaves through the community. By the time the police arrived at the crime scene, a large crowd had gathered outside their house. Upon entering the house, the police officers were met with a gruesome scene: the bodies of 3 women who had been brutally murdered. The police secured the crime scene and began their investigation. During this process, they found 2 bullet shells inside the house. One of the shells was linked to the gunshot wound that killed Megha, who had been shot in the head. However, despite a thorough search of the house lobby, the police were unable to locate the second bullet. A forensic team was called in to collect evidence from the crime scene. The bodies of the 3 women were then sent for post-mortem examination. As news of the murder spread, the entire city of Indore was left reeling in shock. The post-mortem report later revealed that 21-year-old Ashlesha and her 70-year-old grandmother, Rohini, had died from excessive bleeding caused by multiple stab wounds inflicted on their bodies. This report confirms that Megha was the only one shot to death. However, it raises a crucial question for the police: if 2 bullet shells were found, who was the second shot intended for? Megha's husband, along with the public, also started pressuring the police, demanding that they solve the case quickly so that the criminals are held accountable to the fullest extent of Indian law. This makes it even more urgent for the police to solve this case quickly. To do this, several teams were deployed to investigate. One team analyzed the call detail records of the 3 victims, Megha, Ashlesha, Rohini. Another team re-examined the forensic evidence. Initially, the police have collected a blood sample from the crime scene that didn't belong to Megha, Ashlesha, or Rohini. The police then detained and questioned various suspects from the surrounding area. Based on the evidence collected, the police have recorded this as a robbery and murder case. Further investigation of the phone records revealed that there was a phone number that had called Megha multiple times, and she had long conversations with this number. After obtaining detailed information about the number, the police found it was registered to a girl named Neha. They then began tracking her location to gather potential leads in the case. One day, the police located Neha near an ATM in the area. They promptly sent a team to bring her to the police station for questioning. After being informed of the situation of the case, Neha was left astounded. She explained that she initially met Megha at a shopping mall. Then, Neha had bumped into Megha while rushing, causing Megha to drop some items. As Neha apologized and helped Megha gather her belongings, they engaged in conversation and developed a rapport. And Neha even driving Megha to her car, marking the start of their friendship. Neha also discovered that Megha worked for a multi-level marketing, MLM, company. After exchanging phone numbers, they occasionally spoke over the phone. Neha's interest in the MLM business model led her to discuss it with Megha. However, the police found Neha's story suspicious, as her words didn't match her body language. As a result, the police questioned her forcefully and in a confrontational manner. Neha initially tries to hide her dishonesty, but under intense police questioning, she confesses. She then told the police a story that even surprised them. Neha Varma was a 23-year-old beautician who was known for her beauty and cheerful personality. Her father, a van driver, had limited financial resources, making it challenging for Neha to pursue her dreams. During this time, Neha met Rahul, and they developed a close friendship that blossomed into romance. At 24, Rahul was handsome but also struggled financially. Despite their similar financial situations, they deeply loved each other and wanted to get married. They sought opportunities to rapidly build wealth and achieve a comfortable lifestyle, securing their financial future. Neha and Megha met for the first time. Megha, who had a taste for expensive jewelry, was wearing gold ornaments that day. Neha perceived Megha as wealthy due to her jewelry and decided to approach her. Neha started approaching Megha by deliberately bumping into her, start chatting and befriending her. Neha started thinking about robbing Megha after getting to call her through phone calls. Neha then shared her plan with her boyfriend Rahul, telling him that Megha was extremely wealthy, making her an easy target. Rahul liked the idea, as it would solve their financial problems and allow them to live comfortably once they were married. Following this, Rahul started making plans to kill Megha and the two other women in her house. He thought that if he could get away with the crime without anyone finding out, no one would be able to file a complaint against them. Rahul finalized his plan but needed a gun to carry it out. Luckily for him, his friend Manoj, who was close to both Rahul and Neha, had a gun. Rahul had been planning to kill Megha and her family, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to execute his plan. That moment arrived on June 13, 2011. On that day, Neha called Megha and expressed interest in joining her multi-level marketing scheme, MLM. Unbeknownst to Megha, this was a ruse orchestrated by Rahul. Neha arrived at Megha's house early in the morning, and Megha asked her to fill out a membership form. However, Neha didn't know what information to fill in the form, so she asked Megha if she could get a friend arrive to help her. Megha agreed, and Neha then called Rahul, as planned. Rahul and his accomplice, Manoj, were waiting for Neha's call, and they immediately went to Megha's house. Once Rahul entered the house, he pulled out a gun and shot Megha at point-blank range, killing her instantly. The sound of this gunshot reached Ashlesha and Rohini, causing both of them to run into the lobby. Rahul and Manoj initially intimidated Ashlesha and her grandmother Rohini, demanding Ashlesha's ATM card and PIN in exchange for their lives. Ashlesha, hoping to be spared, quickly handed over the card. However, Rahul and Manoj were aware that they had been seen, and this posed a risk to their. To eliminate witnesses, Rahul attempted to shoot Ashlesha but accidentally shot himself in the foot instead. Manoj then took a knife and brutally murdered both Ashlesha and Rohini. After the killings, the three thieves, including Neha, Rahul, Manoj, stole approximately 1 million Indian rupees and valuable jewelry worth up to $500,000 rupees and Ashlesha's ATM card. Rahul, along with Neha and Manoj, had planned to use the ATM card to withdraw cash. However, their plan failed when Neha was arrested by the police. Rahul to file an untrue report at the police station and was arrested, but was later hospitalized due to gunshot wounds. The police matched Rahul's blood sample from the crime scene to one taken from him. It was a match. The police quickly solved the case and arrested the suspects. Following a prolonged and contentious court case, the three defendants, Megha, Rahul, Manoj, were sentenced to death by hanging in December 2013. The district court handed down this severe punishment due to the heinous nature of the crime, in which the defendants killed women from 3 generations of the Megha family. Physical evidence, including blood-stained clothing, knives, and jewelry, was recovered from the defendants by the police. One of the defendants, Megha, is currently serving her sentence in the central jail. Notably, she has been teaching a beauty parlor course to fellow female inmates while incarcerated. This case was notable for being the first time the district court had imposed a death sentence on a woman. Megha and Rahul's desire for quick wealth led them to get involved in a life of crime. It is fortunate that the perpetrators were caught. If Megha had not worn her valuable jewelry to the mall and had not trusted a stranger she met there, the outcome may have been different. Megha's husband, Megha Deshpande, was pleased with the court's decision and praised the judiciary and the police for their efforts. Hey detectives, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of the Ortega family. Paula, born in March 1986, is the second child in a large family. She excelled at Dario Figueroa Lara School and then went on to study at the Polytechnic University. During her time at university, Paula discovered her passion for the hospitality industry. After completing her studies, Paula became actively involved in expanding her family's business, focusing on the production of party goods. Her family, the Ortega Alcosers, were wealthy and highly respected in Sangalki and surrounding towns in Ecuador. Paula's father had started his business by supplying party goods across Ecuador, eventually finding great success and enabling him to produce his own balloons, piñatas, and other festive items. This growth led to the establishment of multiple stores. The business success led to the opening of several stores in various locations, including in Sinoli in Ecuador's capital, Quito. Each member of the family played a vital role in the business, contributing to its development and operation. The father oversaw the expansion of the main production line, while opening new workshops for various party items. Paula and her 2 siblings each managed a store, shaping it according to their own vision. Paula's entrepreneurial skills extended beyond just managing her store. The business became even more successful when she added a party planning service. This venture brought her immense joy as it allowed her to bring happiness to people. Paula Ortega has achieved great success in her business career, but her personal life has not been as fortunate. Despite her youthful appearance, but she faced numerous hardships in her life, with her first marriage to Carlos Pedro serving as an example. After their first daughter was born, Carlos became an alcoholic. This led to him frequently disappearing from home, during which time he also stole money from Paula's shop. Things got worse when Paula discovered Carlos was having an affair, forcing her to end her marriage to him. During this difficult time, raising her daughter alone, Paula found it difficult to be optimistic to find happiness. However, with her family's emotional support and dedication to work, she eventually regained some stability. It wasn't until 10 years later that Paula met Christian Diego, a young man 4 years her junior. She was initially hesitant to trust him due to what had happened before. Christian, however, turned out to be patient, reliable, and especially skilled in forming a connection with Paula's daughter. 2 years into the relationship, Paula's heart softened towards Christian, and they decided to get married. Christian lovingly Paula's daughter as his own, and soon they welcomed their new daughter, Maria. Christian and Paula spent 5 happy years together, during which time Christian became an integral part of Paula's family business, helping to find locations for new stores. This job required him to travel often, resulting in frequent absences from home. Christian comes from a low-income family, But he has big dreams. He wants to one day own a large and successful business. In 2000, when her father passed away after a long illness, her life took a complete turn. The loss devastated the family and disrupted their business. Some people are so skilled at hiding their true nature that they can live with others for years without raising suspicion. A shocking and unexpected incident is often what exposes their true nature. And Christian's change becomes apparent after several incidents, which reveal his true character. Christian and his wife, Paula Ortega, appeared to be a happy and successful couple to those around them. But beneath the surface, their relationship was far from perfect. Christian saw an opportunity to take over Paula's father's role and fulfill his own ambitions of wealth and power. Unfortunately, due to his lack of experience, he made a series of failed business decisions. Frustrated and desperate, Christian's behavior towards his family changed dramatically. He began to resent them, then abandoned them to live a life of luxury. He immersed himself in a world of pleasure and became involved with many women and alcohol. Without Paula's father to restrain him, Christian's true nature finally began to emerge. Paula refuses to repeat the mistakes of her previous miserable marriage, but her relationship with Christian only gets worse. They had an unhappy home life, filled with frequent, that revealed Christian's true character, an ambitious and power-hungry individual who only cared about himself and demanded unconditional obedience. After a heated argument, Paula secretly filed for divorce. However, when Christian found out, his behavior suddenly changed. To maintain his status in the family and afraid of losing everything, Christian repented and tried to change everything. He sincerely apologized for his previous actions, saying that they were due to confusion and insecurity, and vowed to love and cherish his family. Convinced by Christian's words and afraid of being alone again, Paula decided to give him a second chance, despite her initial reservations. In an attempt to mend their relationship, Christian proposed a romantic dinner at home, which Paula agreed to. To prepare for the evening, Paula asked her parents to babysit her daughter. While getting ready, she still couldn't get rid of her mixed feelings. On the surface, she was very excited, but deep inside, she still longed for a happy, united family and durable family. The evening got off to a great start, with the living room decorated with festive garlands and the dining table lit by the warm glow of candles. Christian opened a bottle of white wine, and Paula served a hot meal. However, Christian's sudden announcement disrupted the peaceful atmosphere. He shared with Paula his plans for the Allure company, revealing that he had made a serious mistake in a recent tender, and it has resulted in significant financial losses. Christian announces that the company needs a new investor to stay afloat. This means that a portion of the company's ownership will change officially. Paula objects to the idea, believing that her father's business should remain family-owned. Christian, who has found an investor, becomes increasingly frustrated with Paula's objections. His eagerness to close the deal clashes with Paula's desire to keep the company in the family, causing tension in their relationship and spoiling the mood at dinner. On January 2, 2023, Paula took her youngest daughter to the playroom. She then went to her shop, where she was preparing a large order for an upcoming themed event, which involved assembling balloon fountains and party decorations. During her lunch break, two men showed up at the shop, despite it being closed. She opened the door, expecting a courier for the balloon bouquets she had prepared. To her surprise, the two men were dressed alike and wore dark hoodies, which made them stand out from the other customer. As they entered the shop, they seemed out of place and they're lingering. Scanning the area caused Paula to feel uneasy. The situation escalated when they moved toward her, cornering her against the wall. Then, a young courier knocked on the glass door, breaking the tense atmosphere. Two suspicious men quickly left the store, and the delivery person accidentally rescued Paula from a dangerous situation. Paula felt a mix of anxiety and apprehension as she handed over the package, then she proceeded to close her shop, wrapping up her day. Her hands trembled as she called her mother, expressing her fear over the phone. Although her mother advised reporting the incident to the police, Paula declined. Maybe she was just scared, and no harm actually happened. The rest of the day, Paula's thoughts were consumed by the strange encounter and her husband Christian's recent behavior. Seeking comfort, she took a walk around the city, stopping at a cafe for coffee and then visiting her sister, where they shared a cup of fragrant tea. As they talked, Paula opened up to her sister about the frightening encounter at her shop and her troubled marriage. She shared how Christian had changed after their father's passing, becoming increasingly consumed by his addiction to alcohol and being unfaithful. For the first time, Paula let go of her pride and shame, confessing to her sister the pain she endured in her marriage. The conversation brought her a sense of relief and comfort. Paula's younger sister Adriana described her as lively, happy, enterprising, and hardworking, with a gentle and kind nature as a mother. One day, Paula discussed her long-term goals with her sister, including her aspirations for her daughter's future careers and her own plans for the business. She was a selfless and dedicated person. After their emotional conversation, Paula headed home. However, her journey was interrupted by a phone call from Christian. He informed her that he was picking up their daughter from her play activities and would also stop by the shop to pick up his other daughter. The background noise of children's voices made his conversation rushed. Paula didn't get an opportunity to tell Christian about a disturbing incident at her shop, largely because she suspected his possible involvement. Paula reluctantly went back to work, putting her family's needs before her own. Christian soon arrived alone, explaining that their daughter had opted to go home early, and he couldn't refuse her request. He told Paula that the girls were waiting for dinner at home and were looking forward to hamburgers. Then, Christian took Paula to the courtyard of a shopping center several blocks away, rather than a nearby fast food joint. After parking the car in a secluded area, he left Paula inside while he went to collect their order. As she relaxed in the passenger seat after a stressful day, Paula closed her eyes, unaware of the danger approaching. Two familiar figures soon appeared near the car, talking loudly and circling the vehicle. Paula recognized them as the unexpected visitors who had been to her shop. She tried to remain calm, trusting that the car was secure and Christian would return soon. However, the car's lights suddenly flashed, and the door locks disengaged. Panicked, Paula scrambled to the back seat, hiding between the seats and covering her head with her arms. Unfortunately, she was trapped with no escape. One of the intruders took the driver's seat, and the other got into the back seat. There, he pinned Paula down, making her situation worse. She then felt a warm liquid flowing down her arm, and shortly after, she lost consciousness. Paula sustained severe injuries, including 11 knife wounds on her neck and 2 on her face. A violent attack left Paula heavily injured and her assailants fled the scene. 7 minutes later, Christian returned to the car and witnessed a horrifying scene. The inside of the car was covered in blood. Panicked, Christian called emergency services and struggled to explain the situation clearly. After notifying Paula's mother about the attack, Christian drove to the hospital, but sadly, Paula died in the emergency room before receiving medical attention. Christian's reaction to his wife's tragic death was one of intense grief. Paula's sudden and violent death left everyone in shock, and many questions remained unanswered about the identity and motives of her attackers. Investigators discovered that $600 and a gold necklace were missing from Paula's purse, so they initially suspected a robbery. Further investigation revealed that 2 unknown men had visited Paula's store earlier that day, captured on city cameras. Although the footage showed the suspects wearing hoodies, making their faces unidentifiable, but images from the security camera footage still provide some clues for investigators to pursue. 2 months after the tragic incident, Paula's family was still seeking justice, but the investigation had made little progress. However, Things changed when Paula's younger sister, Adriana, shared important information that she suspected Christian was involved in the case. Adriana told investigators about her conversation with Paula on the day of the incident, revealing Christian's infidelity and domestic violence towards Paula, which led Paula to consider ending her marriage. Christian had a motive for the crime, because if the divorce happened, his ambitions would be affected and he would lose his wealth and social status. The prosecution learned about this lead further and conducted a search of Christian's home, where they found incriminating messages on his phone. These messages revealed multiple affairs and strained marital relations. Another critical piece of evidence was a document that Paula had refused to sign, which would have transferred the company to other investors. As the prosecution continues to gather evidence against Christian, they uncover new details that shed further light on the complexities of Christian and Paula's relationship. Notably, 2 weeks after the incident, Adriana discovered a transaction that raised further suspicions about Christian's behavior. She discovered that he had made a significant transaction, transferring $2,000 to an unidentified woman's bank account. He made a payment from his wife Paula's account while she was dying from her injuries. It seems Christian has been waiting for the right opportunity to do this. Investigations confirmed that on the day of the incident, Christian made a $2,000 transfer to Laura Castillo's bank account. Laura, a 28-year-old woman, was questioned by police after her identity was discovered as the recipient of the payment. Laura explained that she had noticed her bank card was missing a couple of days before the transfer but hadn't thought much of it, assuming her brother had borrowed it. Although her account received the payment, Laura denied knowing Christian and had a solid alibi for the time of the incident, which cleared her of any involvement. She was released from questioning, but the investigation was left at a dead end once again. Days after the crime, Laura went back to the police station with an update on her brother. As she initially suspected, he had indeed returned her bank card. Laura gave a detailed description of her brother's appearance, which matched one of the criminals caught on surveillance cameras near the car. One crucial piece of evidence was that one attacker had neglected to pull up his hood while fleeing the scene, allowing his face to be seen. The investigation led to the identification of 2 offenders, Byron and Morton Castillo, who had an extensive history of criminal activity. The 2 criminals were arrested, but the question remains, why did these criminals target Paula? A deeper investigation revealed that they had attacked Paula repeatedly. On December 8, 2022, Paula was the victim of a car theft at a gas station. As she was distracted by one man, his accomplice quickly got into her car and drove away. Thankfully, her daughters were not in the vehicle at the time. The gas station's surveillance footage revealed the identities of the perpetrators. Besides, Paula had unknowingly met one of the thieves earlier that day. In a surprising turn of events, Christian then came forward claiming that the thieves had contacted him. He arranged a meeting with them, and during this encounter, he managed to retrieve Paula's stolen belongings, including her wallet. This action of Christian makes people suspicious of his true intentions and wonder if he is collaborating with the thieves. Surveillance cameras became key in identifying the men involved in the carjacking, and Christian realized he was a suspect. To divert the police's suspicion, Christian created a new defense story, claiming that he had been blackmailed by Byron and Morton. They demanded a large sum of money from him. However, before he could make this statement, the police acted quickly by questioning Byron and Morton separately and only telling one of them that the other suspect had confessed. The police obtained a confession from Morton. According to Morton's statement, Christian had paid them $2,000 over 2 months before to kill his wife, Paula, with the promise of an additional $2,000 after the murder. During a reenactment of the crime, Morton showed how he inflicted 11 fatal knife wounds on the Paula. With the crime exposed, Morton callously revealed all the details about his and Christian's arrangement. Morton exposed that the car theft and the attack on Paula's shop were also tactics used by Christian to intimidate her. Fortunately, Paula survived for a few hours longer than planned. On November 29, 2023, the three suspects, Christian, Brin, and Morton, appeared in court. The prosecution presented a detailed account of the incidents on the day of the murder, compiled from multiple sources. Surveillance camera footage from the area where Christian parked his car was analyzed using forensic techniques. The footage revealed a disturbing series of incidents. In the video, Christian is seen leaving his car and walking towards an elevator in a nearby shopping center. Soon after, Christian is seen remotely unlocking his car from a distance, allowing two accomplices, Brin and Morton, to enter the vehicle and attack Paula. The prosecutor's report highlighted Christian's unusual behavior after the attack. Surveillance videos showed him pacing back and forth, making phone calls, and even approaching and then retreating from the car. When he found his bleeding wife, he displayed no signs of shock or a sense of urgency to get her medical help. According to the videos, during the first 4 minutes after the attack, Christian's actions were calm and deliberate. He callously handled financial transactions, paying Brin and Morton for their role in the assault, while Paula lay bleeding in the car. At the time, she was still alive. Paula's family lawyers used this footage as evidence, urging the court to consider it as an aggravating factor in the crime. Christian dropped off Brin and Morton near Paula's store before the attack. However, these individuals arrived at the store earlier than expected, suggests that the original murder may have been planned for the store's closing time, when Paula was alone and eating lunch. The sequence of incidents presented in court during Christian's trial indicates that the crime was premeditated. Several hours before the 1:30 p.m. attack, prosecutor Marlon Calderon pointed out inconsistencies in the suspects' actions, highlighting the question of how they knew Paula would be at the store at that time, unless they had been following them. Furthermore, Christian's behavior was scrutinized as evidence of his involvement in the crime. Notably, he was observed not fully closing the car window and unlocking the doors near the store. Additionally, he was seen pacing back and forth multiple times before assisting his wife and making phone calls, rather than immediately seeking medical attention at a nearby clinic. These actions are central to the case against him, which accuses him of orchestrating the murder of his wife, Paula. Testimonies from 10 witnesses, including neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, revealed Christian's true motives and objectives. He tried to pressure Paula into transferring her shares in the company because he could not sign a legal contract, but his efforts were unsuccessful. Although Christian did not physically harm Paula, he inflicted severe psychological abuse on her, artfully concealing it under the guise of a perfect family life. The Prosecutor General's report stated that video evidence implicated Christian as the mastermind behind the crimes, leading to his isolation. This measure is not an arrest warrant but a precautionary step to curb his threat to society. After this incident, Christian was accused of orchestrating his wife's death. His defense team tried their best to defend that he was innocent. However, they were unsuccessful in refuting key evidence, including surveillance footage and falsified company transfer documents. The defense team then changed their strategy, attempting to depict Christian as suffering from a mental disorder. Multiple psychiatrists evaluated Christian, but ultimately, he was deemed competent to stand trial. With the gravity of the situation becoming increasingly clear, Christian's defense counsel advised him to flee the country. They asked if his passport was ready and suggested that he purchase a ticket to Panama for the next day. However, this plan to evade justice ultimately failed. Christian's search for Central American flight tickets initially raised suspicion with the authorities. Following this discovery, the prosecutor quickly ordered an 8-hour detention of Christian. This was succeeded by the presentation of charges and the disclosure of case details to a specialized domestic violence judge, preceding the trial. Christian was held in pre-trial detention as the alleged mastermind behind an extreme act of violence that left 2 young children without a mother and their family to grieve. The Paula Ortega family demands justice for this heinous crime, emphasizing the immense pain and suffering inflicted on their children, and the devastating loss they endured. After the case was widely publicized, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, finding Christian and his two accomplices, Brin and Morton, committed a brutal, intentional and carefully planned crime. As the trio showed no remorse, Christian and Brin and Morton were ultimately sentenced to 26 years in prison. The municipal authorities of Rumenawi are deeply saddened by the loss of Paula. They expressed their heartfelt condolences to her family and friends. Paula was a highly respected businesswoman, a loving friend, mother, and wife who played a vital role in the development of the canton and bringing prosperity to those around her. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Cave. Jennifer Cave was born in March 1984 near Bishop, Texas, to a family living on a modest farm. Her mother, Sharon, remarried, and her father, Charlie, was a welder. He was a good husband and father, but alcohol turned him into a troublemaker. However, when he was sober, he was calm. Despite the family's ups and downs, they remained close. Sharon worked as an accountant at a chemical plant while raising her family. Jennifer, unlike her outgoing siblings, was quite shy. Jennifer loved reading, which helped her develop her intelligence and memory. Despite her lack of self-confidence, Jennifer was active in school sports and social activities. Her father's abusive drinking habits tore the family apart. After her parents divorced, Jennifer and Clayton lived with their father. They felt great sympathy for him and tried to comfort him. Jennifer wanted her father to stop drinking so much that she ignored the fact that he really didn't want to change. For years after the divorce, in 1999, her mother, Sharon, met a new man named Jim Sedgwick. When Jennifer entered her teens, she changed. She got her braces off, got new glasses, and her appearance became much better. Her personality changed along with her new look. She graduated at the top of her class thanks to her intelligence. Jennifer enrolled in Texas State University as a finance major, but quickly became discouraged and dropped out after her first semester. She then attended community college in Austin and worked part-time at a restaurant in the city to support herself. During this time, she dated Mark, a nice guy from a good family. Their relationship could have led to marriage, but Jennifer became addicted to the nightlife. She partied and drank frequently. Her time spent drinking increased, and along with her marijuana use, her bad habits gradually took over her life. Jennifer's life took a turn when she meets Colton Petoniak. Colton Petoniak was born and raised in Bryant, Arkansas. During his youth, he was known as a smart, attractive boy who was popular with many girls. Colton has a passion for skateboarding and playing the guitar. He attends an all-boys Catholic middle school in Little Rock, where he consistently excels academically and is often named honor roll student. In 2000, Colton was one of 7 seniors and one of 166 statewide finalists for the National Honor Society. During his senior year, he began to have problems with alcohol and violence. This was largely due to his involvement with a wealthy youth group. Colton Petoniak was born and raised in Bryant, Arkansas. During his youth, he was known as a smart, attractive boy who was popular with many girls. However, instead of focusing on his studies, he continued his debauched lifestyle. This led to him losing friends and becoming known for his addiction to alcohol and marijuana. He could have had a bright future if not for these self-destructive habits. After being expelled from his fraternity, he began to engage in illegal drug dealing. His family tried to support him through this, even bringing him back home to live with them. In the spring of 2004, Jennifer and Colton met at a party and immediately connected. Jennifer, always optimistic, decided to give their relationship a try, despite the risks involved. Over time, their friendship gradually developed into a romantic relationship. Jennifer began using drugs with Colton. Colton's luxury apartment became their regular hideout for illegal drug use. Jennifer's addiction became more serious. Her parents tried many times to help her get off drugs, even giving her a car in the hopes that she would come home more often. However, every time Jennifer came home, she failed to keep her promise to quit her addiction. During that time, Colton's condition also gradually worsened. He became paranoid and started carrying weapons to create the image of someone with a criminal record. In 2004, Colton was arrested for illegal drug possession. He later entered rehab. Elsewhere, Jennifer's relationship with her family deteriorated when her parents visited her. They were completely shocked to see that Jennifer had lost a lot of weight. Her image was no longer as healthy as before. Refusing the family's advice to go to a drug treatment center upset Jennifer's parents. Because of that, Sharon and her new husband, Jim, made the decision to stop supporting her financially. They hoped that because of that, she would make more efforts to get her life back. Jennifer did not have enough money to survive on her own, so she was forced to live with Colton. However, after a month of living together, she decided to leave due to some unexpected events. Fortunately, a friend helped her not only by providing a place to stay but also by providing emotional support. After a difficult time, Jennifer's life seemed to be back on track. In early 2005, she began a new relationship with a man named Scott, a nice single father. Scott's lifestyle was the complete opposite of Colton's. Scott worked at a restaurant, sang well, and maintained a healthy lifestyle. When she was with him, Jennifer felt better about herself and looked healthier. She took on the role of a housewife and became the ideal mother figure for his daughter. However, she was still ready to leave at any time if Colton called. On another hand, Colton moved to the Orange Tree apartment complex near the university, where there were parties every weekend. His image changed the views of the people who frequented the place. In addition, there were many healthy things. In the comfortable pace of life, he met Laura Ashley Hall. In contrast to Colton, Laura was infatuated with this man and often showed jealousy towards the other women in the group, especially Jennifer. Laura made a different impression on their friends, who wondered why she was so arrogant and often made fun of anyone. Laura, like Colton, also came from a well-off family. She was an active person, participated in many different activities, and was successful in her studies. After graduating from high school, she enrolled in college but soon dropped out, choosing instead a more comfortable job and lifestyle. Later, Laura and Colton began a romantic relationship. She was also deeply attracted to Colton, like Jennifer. However, Laura's friends noticed that she had changed for the worse, becoming more aggressive, neglecting her work, and not taking care of herself. Many suspected that she had also started using illegal drugs. Beside that, Jennifer entered a new chapter after ending her relationship with Scott. She felt that she did not fit in with his family and did not want to cause trouble. However, she still kept in touch with Colton, who was still deeply in love with her. Regarding their relationship, Jennifer just wanted to keep it as friends. She wanted to get a stable job and go back to college. In August, a new opportunity appeared in her life. She started a new romantic relationship with Michael Rodriguez and found a great job. At a law firm, she impressed everyone after her training and was offered a high-paying consultant position. She was proud of herself and felt truly happy. On August 16th, Jennifer decided to celebrate her new life with her friends. They went to a bar and then to a club. According to a friend, the bouncer at the club refused to let Colton in because of his appearance. This may have led him to turn to drugs. The investigation is still ongoing to shed light on the events that happened that fateful night. The next morning, Jennifer's boyfriend, Michael Rodriguez, checked his phone but found no calls from Jennifer. He recalled that she had promised to call him after dropping Colton off. Michael did not trust Colton's character and lifestyle and was concerned. Around the same time, Jennifer's roommate noticed that she had not come home the night before. The alarm clock was still going off, but no one had turned it off. This worried her roommates as they had a habit of informing each other about their plans. Jennifer's roommate tried to contact her but received no response, which was out of character for her. She was still scheduled to go to work that day, but her work clothes were still hanging on the rack, with no sign that she had put them on and left. This made her roommates even more worried because Jennifer was not the type to leave for work without informing them. The law firm was notified on the morning of August 17th that new employee Jennifer Cave had not arrived for work on time. This was unusual because she had made a good impression during her internship. When a colleague called her at 9 a.m., there was no answer. At 11 a.m., the firm decided to send someone to check Jennifer's home, but there was no answer. The firm contacted Jennifer's mother, Sharon Sedgwick, and discovered that she had also been unable to reach her daughter. The family suspected that Jennifer might have gotten back together with her ex-boyfriend Colton Petoniak, whom they did not like. After more than 12 hours without any news of Jennifer, Sharon reported her daughter missing to the police. The Sedgwicks visited Colton's home, but he refused to meet with them. Jennifer's car was found near Colton's home, making the situation even more suspicious. Although the police searched Jennifer's home and found nothing unusual, they are still investigating based on information from Michael and Sharon, along with the fact that Jennifer's car was found near Colton's home. Sharon and her new husband, Jim, believe that something serious has happened to their daughter. Michael said that Jennifer went out with friends on August 16th to celebrate her new job. One of her friends was her ex-boyfriend, Colton. Jennifer called Michael several times and told him that she wasn't scared but that Colton was acting strangely and that she needed to take him home. However, she did not contact Michael after that. All the clues led investigators to where Colton lived. While the police were still deciding what to do, Sharon and Jim decided to take action themselves. They went to Colton's house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. They sensed something was wrong and were about to call a locksmith to open the door. But Jim suddenly discovered an open window and decided to climb in through it. Once inside, he found the apartment in complete disarray. As soon as he entered, Jim was hit by a stench so bad it made him nauseous. He immediately covered his mouth and moved toward the stronger smell. Sure enough, the entire house was empty. And in the bathroom, Jim discovered a gruesome sight, a woman whose head and limbs had been cut off. Nearby, he also found some trash bags and a gym bag. Jim was horrified when he checked inside and discovered the victim's remaining body parts. The freckled legs looked very similar to his stepdaughter's. But the victim's body was so mutilated that it was difficult to identify. Still, Jim hoped the worst would be over for his daughter until the last minute. After calming down a bit, he immediately called an ambulance. Jennifer Cave met a tragic death from being shot in the right arm. The bullet went through her arm, chest, and into her heart, also damaging a major artery. This led to severe blood loss and caused her to die quickly. After that, her body went through incredible and terrifying changes. Forensic experts discovered 18 stab wounds on the victim's body, mainly in the chest and neck. The perpetrator inflicted these wounds after the victim was dead. He then decapitated the victim and shot a bullet through the throat into the head, intending to dismember the victim to easily dispose of the body. The perpetrator severed the victim's upper limbs and placed them in a prepared bag and a garbage bag. The body was left in the bathtub, covered with a saw. However, something thwarted his original plan, forcing him to change his course of action. After receiving a search warrant, the police conducted a thorough investigation of the apartment. Police found .38 caliber shell casings in the apartment. The murder weapon was found in Petoniak's car parked in the garage. They also found a large bloody machete in the dishwasher. Toxicology tests showed that the victim had alcohol, marijuana, and methamphetamine in his blood. A road atlas was found at the scene with pages torn out, marking routes in southwest Texas. This suggested that the apartment owner, Colton Petoniak, had fled. Police immediately issued a warrant for his arrest. Investigators conducted interviews with Colton's neighbors to gather information. Nora Sullivan, one of the neighbors, witnessed a suspicious incident at approximately 3 a.m. on August 17. When she opened the door, she found Colton standing there with blood on his body and a handgun in his waistband. Nora asked him what happened, and Colton said he had gotten into a gunfight with several people. However, Nora did not hear any gunshots that night and suspected he was lying. Investigators also discovered that Colton had contacted Laura twice that night, but did not have specific details about the conversation. On the morning of August 17, Colton went to a hardware store and purchased items such as a saw, mask, gloves, and cleaning supplies. He used these items to destroy Jennifer's body and planned to clean up the apartment to remove any traces of the crime. However, at that time, the couple Sharon and Jim unexpectedly appeared, possibly scaring Colton into running away, foiling his plan. While investigating Colton's apartment, investigators found a vital clue that led directly to him. He and Laura Hall were spotted in Mexico, where they had crossed the border in her car. Local authorities circulated Colton's photo nationwide during that time. The couple enjoyed their time going to movies and restaurants. They stayed at a hotel in the border town of Piedras Negras, where an employee recognized him as a wanted man. The employee took a photo of him and sent it to the police. Mexican law enforcement arrested the couple and took them to the border, where U.S. officials arrested them. Laura Hall was released from custody pending further investigation. On August 23, 2005, Colton was charged with the felony murder of Jennifer Cave. A month later, Laura Hall was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice. The prosecution presented evidence recovered from Colton's apartment, including a videotape from the store and receipts for the items purchased. Colton claimed he had no memory of the night of the crime due to amnesia caused by excessive alcohol and illegal drug use. He did not initially deny harming Jennifer, but insisted he had no memory. He claimed that he woke up to find his ex-girlfriend's body in the bathroom later that day. After discovering the body, he contacted Laura, who advised him to purchase a saw and cleaning supplies. She helped Colton dismember the victim and hide the parts in bags. The prosecution argued that Laura was responsible for Jennifer's injuries after her death. Colton later suggested that Laura may have been motivated by jealousy and implied that she was involved in the act of revenge. However, both defendants pleaded not guilty. But the evidence of Colton's responsibility was overwhelming. Jennifer's body was discovered in Colton's apartment. His fingerprints and DNA were found on items such as knives, saws, and guns collected at the crime scene. Colton's car also contained weapons related to the crime. He also purchased cleaning supplies from the store. The jury had no doubt about Colton's guilt. On January 29, 2007, Colton was sentenced to 55 years in prison, but could be eligible for parole after serving at least half of his sentence. This means Colton won't be released until 2060 at the earliest. The case against Laura Hall is more complicated. The prosecution argues that she may have acted out of blind love for Colton. Laura's DNA was found on one of the victim's shoes, a shop towel, and even the gun used. However, the defense argues that these traces only prove her involvement in dumping the body, not the initial act. They can't prove she fired the first shot. Laura claims she only learned about the case after Colton told her about it and that she was forced to flee to Mexico with him. However, witnesses to their time in Mexico said the couple seemed happy on the trip. In 2007, Laura was convicted of obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. A subsequent trial in 2010 increased the sentence to 11 years in prison and a $144,000 fine. Laura was eventually released on parole on March 15, 2018, with GPS monitoring. She completed her sentence in August of that year. After her parole, Laura's whereabouts remain unknown. Colton Petoniak remains in prison after multiple unsuccessful appeals. In his appeals, Colton claims he has no memory of the events surrounding Jennifer's death. However, he asserts that several witnesses heard Laura confess to the crime and that the prosecution knowingly withheld this information from his defense team, potentially setting him up. Despite Colton's allegations, his appeals have been denied, raising public questions about the case. Jennifer's parents, however, firmly believe that Laura was more involved in the death than she admits and that her punishment was too lenient. Unlike Colton, Laura has shown no remorse or regret for Jennifer's death, referring to her in derogatory terms. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of William Lewis Reese. William Lewis Reese was born in Oklahoma on July 1, 1959, the youngest of 13 children in his family. He grew up in Yukon and Anadarko. Due to his family's financial struggles, he had to drop out of school in the 9th grade to work as a farm laborer. He married Judy Flaming in 1979 after she became pregnant. After getting married, William joined the Oklahoma National Guard but eventually left. During this time, his marriage began to unravel, and Judy divorced him after just 1 year. However, William convinced Judy to remarry him, and they had another child together. Unfortunately, their marriage problems persisted, and heavy drinking led to physical abuse against Judy, ultimately causing their marriage to end again. Judy filed a complaint against her husband in 1982 after he physically abused her, claiming that he also threatened her life with a knife and a shotgun. As a result, Judy divorced him for the second time. William later remarried to another woman. However, this marriage was also short-lived, as his second wife divorced him just a few months later. And William's string of crimes resumed shortly after. In April 1986, William kidnapped a 19-year-old woman who was the daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy. The woman's car broke down on her way to the gym. And William, who worked as a truck driver at that time, approached her and offered assistance by promising to take her to the nearest payphone in his truck. Once inside the vehicle, he restrained her and committed a sexual assault. He then drove her to a nearby motel where he reserved a room for the night. When Williams gave her permission to use the bathroom, she took advantage of the chance to break free and phone the police. He then was arrested, charged, and then released after posting bail. However, a month later, while still awaiting trial, he committed another sexual assault, resulting in a second arrest. Williams stood trial for both crimes, was found guilty, and received the 25 years prison sentence. However, upon reviewing his case, an appeals court found that there were procedural errors in the original trial. As a result, his sentence was significantly shortened and ultimately led to his parole in October 1996. William moved into his mother's home in Anadarko, Oklahoma, after serving 9.5 years. He regained his driver's license in early 1997 and then relocated to Houston, Texas. Shortly after, on May 16, 1997, he attempted to abduct and sexually assault Sandra Sapah, a 19-year-old. When Sandra stopped at a gas station in Webster, Texas, to use a payphone. After the call, she returned to her car and began driving but soon had a flat tire, forcing her to stop again. As she stood there, unsure of what to do next, William stopped the car behind her and offered to help. Sandra accepted his offer and got into the truck. However, William's intentions were sinister, and he overpowered her. Binding her wrists, then he continuing to drive on Interstate 45. Panicking, Sandra discovered that the door was unlocked. Despite being pregnant and fear for her life, Sandra made an attempt to escape by breaking free from the restraints and jumping out. Unfortunately, William caught hold of her and dragged her several miles along the pavement, causing severe injuries. Eventually, Sandra managed to break free and was taken to a nearby hospital. The police were notified, and she provided a description of her attacker. However, due to her traumatic state, she was unable to recall crucial details about the incident. To catch the predator, detectives needed more information. Months after the attack, they decided to use hypnosis on Sandra to see if she could remember anything else. Under hypnosis, Sandra recalled crucial details, including the license plate number of the truck that was involved in the crime. The detectives discovered a lead when they tracked down the owner of the vehicle with the matching license plate number. Which William? William was convicted of aggravated kidnapping and sentenced to 60 years in prison in 1998. While he was serving his sentence, detectives began to suspect that he might be linked to other crimes. Unraveling these secrets took years, leaving several families without answers. On a rainy April 3, 1997, 12-year-old Laura Smither asked her mother for permission to go jogging by herself at 9 a.m. Her mother agreed, not knowing that this ordinary decision would change her life forever. Laura Smither is the daughter of Bob and Gay Smither. She grew up in Friendswood, along with her younger brother. From an early age, Laura demonstrated a kind and gentle nature. She excelled academically and showed great talent in ballet. After being accepted into the prestigious Houston Ballet Academy, her goal of becoming a professional ballerina became a reality just days before this tragic incident. Laura's mother was surprised when she asked to go jogging that day, as she rarely ventured out alone. Homeschooled by her parents, Laura didn't even attend school. However, her desire to improve her dance skills had recently inspired her to take up cardio exercises, such as jogging. She had planned to go for a short run while making breakfast, and her mother agreed, she unaware of the danger lurking nearby. When Laura failed to return after a few hours, her parents began to worry. Normally, Laura was under close supervision and never went out alone for long. Her father, Bob Smither, searched the neighborhood but found no sign of her. He figured his daughter wouldn't be out for long, but she later didn't come back. Laura's parents reached out to relatives and friends to see if anyone had any information about her whereabouts, but no one had seen her. And they contacted the police to file a missing persons report. According to Bob, Laura went jogging this morning and it took longer than he expected. As police began their investigation, locals joined Laura's family to assist in the search. With photos of Laura in hand, her family and neighbors went door to door, asking if anyone had any information. The next morning, the police resumed their search, on foot combing through the nearby woods and helicopters scouring the area from above. Despite the initial lack of leads, the community's determination never wavered. Hundreds of volunteers joined the cause, and the eventually swelling to 6,000 volunteers for a week. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies worked diligently to locate Laura. The National Coast Guard and the FBI also joined forces with the local police department to aid in the extensive search operation. Initial theories suggested that Laura may have become lost in the woods, but after that, the investigation went in one direction, now focus on the possibility of criminal behavior. On Sunday, April 20, 1997, a gathering at Friendswood High School was taking place to discuss the next steps in finding Laura. During this meeting, the police chief expression became anxious after receiving the phone call, leaving those present there wondering what made him react like that. That evening at 10 p.m., Laura's parents received devastating news. A man walking his dog near a retention pond in Pasadena, about 12 miles from where Laura went missing, stumbled upon a badly decomposing body of a young girl. The girl was wearing only a pair of socks and was found in a muddy area. The police immediately suspected that the body was Laura's, and this was later confirmed through an autopsy. Everyone was devastated by the sudden and tragic loss of Laura. In addition to their grief, fear gripped the neighborhood, with many worried that a predator was on the loose and could target another child. To address these concerns and prevent further harm, the police opened an investigation, but initially they had no information about the perpetrator. To gather more information, the police started interviewing sex offenders in the area. They began to focus on William Reese, a 38-year-old equipment operator, was working at Windsor Estate in Friendswood at the time. On the day of Laura's disappearance, William left the workplace around the time she went missing and returned 30 minutes later, it raising suspicions about his activities during that short period. Police conducted an in-depth investigation but were unable to find any evidence shows that William is involved in this crime. As a result, the case went unsolved for years, leaving many questions unanswered. 19 years later, another mysterious disappearance happened to Kelly Cox, 20 years old. Kelly, a criminology student at the University of North Texas, in Denton on July 15, 1997, she and her classmates took a field trip to a local prison in Denton for a criminology class. She left her car in the parking lot across from the police station and had hidden a spare key in a magnetic box underneath her car. She then locked her belongings, including her cell phone, inside the car as instructed by her professor. After completing the jail tour at noon, Kelly rushed to her car to go to the university to take a test. However, when she tried to use the spare key to open her car door, it did not work, despite she checking it the night before. Since Kelly's phone was locked in her car, so she went to a nearby gas station and used a payphone to call her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris III, for help. She then purchased a drink inside the gas station. But from that point on, Kelly was never seen alive again. After about 45 minutes, Lawrence arrived at the meeting place, but when he got there, her car was still in the parking lot, yet Kelly herself was nowhere to be found. Neither the key box nor the key were present at the scene. He spent some time searching for Kelly, and when he couldn't find her, he decided to call her mother to see if she had returned home safely. However, Kelly's mother informed him that she hadn't arrived. Despite the initial suspicion surrounding Kelly's disappearance, but her family chose to wait a little longer to see if she would come back. It wasn't until 5:30 p.m. that same day when Kelly failed to pick up her 19-month-old daughter, Alexis, from her babysitter, that her family became certain that something was amiss. Kelly's family knew that she was a responsible mother, and it was entirely out of character for her to neglect her daughter like that. When Kelly was reported missing, the police immediately started searching for her. In keeping with standard procedure in missing persons cases, the police started by scrutinizing people close to Kelly. Initially, they focused on Kelly's boyfriend Lawrence, but after he passed 4 polygraph tests, he was cleared as a suspect. The case made progress when information led them to another potential suspect, William Reese, who had been under investigation in the Laura Smithers case. William, a sex offender, was considered a top suspect in Kelly's disappearance because a gas station receipt placed him in the Denton area on the same day Kelly vanished, even though he didn't live there at the time. The police searched his car for Kelly's fingerprints but did not find any. Without any leads, witnesses, or surveillance footage, the case stalled and went unsolved for many years. Kelly's disappearance was extremely difficult for her mother and stepfather, who had to raise Alexis on their own. As the years went by, Kelly never returned, but her daughter followed in her mother's footsteps, attending the same university. Alexis held on to the hope that her mother would come back one day. Kelly's family never lost hope of her return, continued to share her story, and kept her picture visible. Unfortunately, their wish never came true, and Kelly never made it back home. On the morning of August 17, 1997, Jessica Kane, a 17-year-old high school student, failed to return home after attending a theater party the night before. Jessica was born on August 28, 1979. She is known for her vibrant personality, creativity, and passion for sports. While studying at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas, she did well academically and served as captain of the school's coaching team. After focusing on her drama career and participating in numerous plays, Jessica attended a musical review in Dickinson on August 16, 1997. Following the event, she joined her friends at a cast party at Bennigan's on Bay Avenue Boulevard. However, Jessica did not return home that night, worrying her mother, who woke her father and called her. They reached out to several friends who had attended the party with Jessica, and all of them reported that she had left around 1:30 a.m. Jessica's parents immediately sensed that something was wrong and began searching for her. Upon investigating, Jessica's father found her vehicle parked near the Lamarck exit, close to the freeway, with her valuables still intact. He later quickly reported his to the police. As police began their investigation, hundreds of volunteers joined in the search for Jessica. During this challenging time, Jessica's parents met Bob and Gay Smither, a couple who had also lost their daughter, Laura Smither. Jessica's family and the Smithers family are going through their own grief. The Smithers family has tried to support Jessica's parents in their search for her. Despite the best efforts of police and volunteers, no sign of Jessica has been found. As a result, police are beginning to consider foul play and believe the chances of Jessica being found alive are extremely low. The case eventually went cold, but Jessica's family never gave up searching for their daughter. In a separate incident, on July 26, 1997, 19-year-old Tiffany Johnson's car was found abandoned at a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma. But she disappeared without a trace. Tiffany was born on April 6, 1978, to Michael and Kathy Dober. She was the youngest daughter, extremely close to her family, especially her mother. Tiffany was a lively and optimistic young woman who grew up in a small town, with a passion for plants and gardening that she inherited from her grandfather. After graduating from high school in 1996, she married Ryan Johnson in 1997 and moved to Bethany, Oklahoma, where she took on 2 jobs to save money for college. Her dream was to attend Oklahoma State University to pursue a degree in botany. But unfortunately, that goal was never realized. On July 26, 1997, Tiffany finished her part-time shift at a restaurant around 2 p.m. She later headed home to get ready for a night out with her husband, Ryan, to celebrate their 3-month anniversary. Tiffany was supposed to meet Ryan at 11 p.m., but before that, she stopped at the Sunshine Car Wash to wash her white neon Dodge. Tragically, she was never seen again. When Ryan went looking for her that night, he couldn't find her at home and found no signs of her whereabouts. A police officer from the Bethany Police Department discovered Tiffany's abandoned white Dodge Neon at a car wash around midnight. The car's key was still in the ignition, and the door was open. The officer found Tiffany's purse inside the vehicle and a phone number for her mother, Kathy, in the glove box. However, when contacted, Kathy had no information about her daughter's whereabouts. The investigators then reached out to Tiffany's husband, Ryan, who also claimed to be unaware of his wife's location. This raised concerns, and it became apparent that something was amiss. The next day, July 27, 1997, near I-40 and Gregory Road, searchers found the body of a young Caucasian woman. When the police arrived at the scene, they suspected the body might be Tiffany's. The suspicion was confirmed when her husband Ryan identified the body from the pictures. Tiffany's body was found with only a swimsuit on, as all other clothing had been removed. The autopsy results revealed that Tiffany was sexually assaulted and strangled to death, although the exact time of her death could not be confirmed. Authorities collected unknown DNA from her body as evidence. With no leads on a suspect, investigators initially focused on Ryan, Tiffany's husband. However, they soon discovered that Tiffany was last seen at the car wash at 6 p.m., and Ryan had a solid alibi, having been at work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. A new lead emerged when the car wash owner contacted investigators, reporting that he saw a customer on the same day Tiffany disappeared. The customer was a man named William Reese, who had been featured in a news report a few months earlier for his involvement in an abduction in Texas. What's more noteworthy is that William has a personal relationship with Tiffany. His mother was good friends with Tiffany's mother, although he himself had never met Tiffany. After her death, he even called Tiffany's mother to offer his condolences. Despite this new information, police were still unable to gather enough evidence to prove William's involvement in Tiffany's murder, and the case remained unsolved for a long time. In 2015, thanks to advancements in DNA technology, investigators found new evidence in the Tiffany case. A DNA swab taken during Tiffany's autopsy in 1997 was sent to the lab for testing. The results matched a DNA profile in the Cody's database, which implicated William in Tiffany's murder. He was subsequently charged in Oklahoma City with the 1997 kidnapping and murder of Tiffany. Just as his trial was about to begin, William unexpectedly started confessing to other crimes in an attempt to reach a deal with the prosecution. Despite having eluded police for 19 years, he ultimately revealed the truth, having a history of aggravated kidnapping and other crimes. When shown photos of Laura Smither, Jessica, and Kelly Cox, he immediately accepted responsibility for their murders and disappearances, although denying any sexual motive behind his actions. William was questioned about his victims in Oklahoma. He agreed to cooperate with authorities by showing them the burial sites of two victims, Jessica and Kelly, on one condition: he would not face the death penalty. In April 2016, investigators followed him to a location in a Houston pasture where human remains were discovered. After several days of excavation, the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that the remains belonged to Jessica. The search continued in Brazoria County, where another set of human remains was found. Dental records confirmed that these remains belonged to Kelly Cox. The trial for the murder of another victim, Tiffany, began in May 2021. William was found guilty by a jury on May 28, 2021, and received a death sentence on August 19, 2021, for her abduction and murder. After his murder conviction in Oklahoma, he was sent to Texas in March 2022 to face trial for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica. He pleaded guilty to all three charges and received a life imprisonment sentence in June 2022. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarai Sierra. Sarai Sierra was born on November 9, 1979, in New York City to Puerto Rican parents who immigrated to the United States in 1973. Her father, Dennis, and mother, Bethany Jimenez, settled in Manhattan, where they raised their children, including Sarai, her brother, David, and her sister, Christina. Soon after moving, the couple joined the local Protestant community. They raised all of their children strictly, following the religious teachings of their chosen faith. Sarai's family regularly attended church together, socialized with other members of the religious community, and the children attended Sunday school. Growing up, Sarai had a strong, energetic, and creative personality. Unlike her younger sister Christina, who was quiet, obedient, and very modest. Sarai's family had strict rules that all members had to follow. These rules, which were applied to the daily routines of the family members, such as the daughters were not allowed to socialize with boys, and they had to be home by 9 p.m. All their friendships were controlled, and the parents always knew where they were and with whom. Sarai's life revolved around her family, school, and church, and her sphere of contact was limited to those places. For a young, active, sociable girl like Sarai, she felt trapped by the boundaries set by her parents, even though they thought they were doing the best for her. During her school years, Sarai planned to go to a teacher training college and become a teacher in the field of culture or art. However, as she neared graduation, her interests changed and she became fascinated with psychology, considering a career change to a field related to this new passion. At a religious community meeting, a young man named Stephen noticed Sarai, a striking dark-haired beauty. He found an excuse to talk to her. At the time, Sarai was 18 years old, while Stephen was 7 years older than her. Despite the age difference, her parents found Stephen to be a decent, polite, and honest young man, so her parents agreed to let the couple date. Stephen quickly got along with Sarai's parents, Dennis and Bethany. Less than a year after meeting, in February 1999, the couple married. Sarai was 19 and Stephen was 26. It is possible that Sarai did not truly love him, but agreed to marry him for the purpose of moving out of her parents' home and freeing herself from such strict control. After the move, Stephen and Sarai settled in Michigan, where Stephen's parents lived. The change was especially important for Sarai, who had spent most of her life in New York. The new environment seemed to have a positive effect on her. She enjoyed decorating her new home, making new friends, and exploring the area. Sarai found work as a receptionist at a local dental office and was thinking about getting a college degree. Sarai soon became pregnant, giving birth to a boy and then a girl. As a result, her college plans were postponed. A few years later, the Sarai family of 4 decided to move again, this time to California, where they settled in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles. Here, Stephen was offered a job, but the couple soon realized that the money he earned was not enough to live on. After consulting with each other, they decided to move back to New York. They found a small apartment to rent. At this time, the couple was having financial difficulties. Sarai remained at home to take care of the children, while her husband did many odd jobs to make a living. However, things began to stabilize when the children started going to school. Sarai got a job at an advertising agency. At the same time, Stephen found a stable job as a bus driver on one of the city's routes. Sarai put her studies on hold to raise her children. As her children grew older and her life became more stable at the age of 30, she returned to her long-cherished dream of pursuing an education. She decided to pursue a different field, choosing a degree in psychology at a local university. However, the boring classes began to bore Sarai. She decided to find herself in a different field, choosing a career that would inspire her and allow her to express herself. Since Sarai had always been creative, good at drawing and seeing beauty in everything, her artistic eye eventually led her to photography. To further hone her skills, she joined a prestigious photography community in New York. Her talent was quickly recognized as she demonstrated her ability to choose the perfect angle and create beautiful compositions. Her work was even praised by professionals for its creativity and vision. In early 2012, Sarai's colleagues advised her to create a social media page to showcase her work. She followed their advice and started posting her photos online. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of users subscribing to her profile and enthusiastically commenting on each new post. Within a few months, she became a real star, and her subscriber count continued to grow exponentially. The enthusiasm really overwhelmed Sarai. She felt that she could achieve much more and wanted to develop and improve in this direction. So she proposed to organize a group photography trip to look for beautiful and unusual locations in different parts of the world. She started by organizing short trips within the country, focusing on capturing iconic architectural landmarks and historical monuments through her lens. When her photos received significant attention and praise, she was motivated to continue. Next, Sarai wanted to travel to Istanbul, one of the most ancient and beautiful cities in the world, to document the city's historical sites. Sarai's decision to take a photography trip to the other side of the world surprised her family, especially her parents. Since she had never traveled abroad or been away from home for a long time, they were not very happy with the idea. However, Sarai was determined to carry out her plan and even arranged for her best friend, Magdalena, to come along. Her parents did not know that Sarai's family was going through a difficult time, as her relationship with her husband began to fall apart. It is possible that this difficult situation prompted Sarai's desire to take the trip. She wanted to change her surroundings and think about her family's difficulties. Sarai had lived in a strict framework for too long, and now she was eager to do what she wanted to do. At the same time, her husband Stephen's social media profile began posting cryptic statuses, reflecting on the value of marriage, love, and mutual respect in relationships. And there was a post where Stephen darkly hinted at Sarai's infidelity. But a few hours later, Stephen deleted the post, leaving unanswered questions behind. It was clear that he felt unhappy and unloved, and he tried to show it to everyone through his social media page. Sarai was also going through the same pain, but she kept it to herself, trying not to complain and focusing on her work. Sarai's long-awaited trip was coming up. But she received some disappointing news just before her departure. Her best friend Magdalena, who was supposed to accompany her, had to cancel the trip due to unforeseen work issues. Although Sarai was extremely upset, she had been looking forward to the trip for so long that she decided not to change her plans. Her family was worried about her traveling alone to a foreign country, but Sarai reassured them that everything would be fine. She promised to keep them updated by calling, writing, and sending photos every day. In addition, Sarai was also planning to visit Germany and Austria, where she had scheduled several commercial photography assignments. Her entire trip was literally scheduled by the hour, and she would not deviate from the plan. On January 7, 2013, Sarai traveled from New York to Istanbul. She had some cash with her, and she had carefully packed her belongings, which included a smartphone, a tablet, and a cheap DSLR camera with a professional lens. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she reported to her family that she had landed safely and was on her way to her pre-booked hotel, which was located in a less popular part of the city. Due to budget constraints, the hotel was located in a remote neighborhood that locals considered unsafe. After dropping off her luggage and changing into her travel clothes, she headed to the nearest metro station, eager to explore the historic city center. Sarai spent her days in Istanbul sightseeing and capturing the beauty of the city through photography. Every evening, she would video call her parents and husband, sharing stories about her experiences and plans for the next day. She also spent time processing the photos and sharing them on social media. Unknown to her family, Sarai met a young man named Tylan on social media in 2012. Over the course of several months, they corresponded and became very close. It was Tylan who convinced her to fly to Istanbul. As a native of Istanbul, Tylan was the ideal guide, showing Sarai around interesting places. Sarai trusted Tylan completely, and they spent many days together exploring the city. After a week in Istanbul, Sarai traveled to several European countries, where she arranged several commercial photo shoots. Here, Sarai saved money on hotel rooms, as she was welcomed by fans who had subscribed to her social media accounts and had been following her work for a long time. Offered to let her stay. And her fan was a young man in Austria, who met her at the airport in Vienna. He was a few years older than Sarai and shared her passion for photography, admired her work and wanted to meet her in person. Sarai's trip went smoothly. She visited all the planned destinations and met everyone she had arranged to meet. On the third day, she arrived in Berlin, where she was greeted at the airport by fans who took her on a tour of the city. After completing her assignment in Germany, Sarai returned to the airport and flew back to Istanbul, planning to stay there for 2 more days before returning home. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she met Taylan and they spent the day exploring the city together. They ended the evening at a popular local bar, and after midnight, Taylan took Sarai back to her hotel, where they said their goodbyes. On January 21, 2013, Sarai was scheduled to return home to New York after her photography trip. Before leaving, she informed her parents and husband of her flight details. Since this was the longest trip she had ever taken away from home, everyone was relieved that the trip was coming to an end. However, before returning, Sarai decided to take a last walk around the city and take some more beautiful photos to show everyone. At the appointed time, Sarai Dennis' father arrived at the airport to pick up his daughter because her husband was at work and could not come. He arrived early to avoid any possible traffic jams. However, after the plane landed and all the passengers had disembarked, Sarai disappeared without a trace. Worse still, her phone was unreachable and all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. Dennis then waited a while longer, and worried about his daughter's absence, he went to see a representative of the airline. They told him that a passenger by that name was not on the flight, which shocked Dennis. He quickly called Stephen and told him what was happening, emphasizing that she needed to be found immediately. Stephen started contacting the hotel in Istanbul where his wife, Sarai, was staying. The hotel staff informed him that although it was time to check out, her belongings were still in the room and she had not arrived to check out, and she did not appear at the hotel on the second day. This information sent family members into a panic, as they did not know where Sarai was and did not understand what to do next. Stephen accessed his wife's account, looking for clues about her disappearance. He discovered her correspondence with a man named Taylan, which aroused his suspicions. Despite this, Stephen decided to contact Taylan directly to find out more. However, Taylan claimed that he had seen Sarai the day before she left and that she had not even called him before the flight. Despite her promise, Sarai's family quickly notified the U.S. Embassy in Istanbul about her disappearance. The next day, a large-scale search operation was launched in the area. Sarai's husband and parents immediately flew to Istanbul to join the search effort. The police launched an investigation, starting with trying to identify the people Sarai had met before she disappeared. To gather information, they interviewed the staff at the hotel where she was staying, as well as her friend Taylan. According to the hotel manager, he last saw Sarai the evening before she disappeared, when she left the hotel with a small bag and a camera. Although she was scheduled to check out the next day, she never returned to the hotel. In addition, the receptionist provided a description of the clothes Sarai was wearing on the day she disappeared. The situation with Taylan is much more interesting and ambiguous. First, the guy's name is actually Taran, and it is still unclear why he introduced himself to Sarai with a fake name. And it is worth considering that they had been in regular contact for several months before meeting, and Sarai had come to Istanbul at his invitation. All of this suggests that there was a romantic relationship, but Taran himself categorically denied it, claiming that they were just friends. The next stage of the investigation involved reconstructing Sarai's route in detail. To achieve this, the police examined her mobile phone data and reviewed the footage of street surveillance cameras. They discovered that Sarai took the metro to Sultanahmet district and then to the Cape between the Bosphorus Strait and the Golden Horn Bay, followed by a trip to Eminönü Bazaar. However, she got lost in the crowd of tourists at the bazaar. The police continued to track her route and discovered that she had boarded the metro again, intending to visit the Sarai walls. Unfortunately, she disappeared from the camera's view again. Police decided to investigate the area around the Sarai wall, questioning locals and searching the area in the hope of finding any witnesses who might have seen a woman holding a camera. After an extensive search, they found the body of a young woman near the ancient Constantinople wall. The body was hidden under a dirty, old blanket, making it less noticeable. Police believe the blanket was used to transport Sierra to the location. There was no clothing on the lower part of the body. An autopsy found that Sarai died from severe head trauma caused by a heavy, blunt object. Her body also showed signs of trauma, including hematoma and 2 broken ribs. There were also several hematomas on her body and several broken ribs. Pathologists also found epithelial granules and blood under Sarai's fingernails, indicating that she had defended herself and scratched at the attacker. An examination found that the attacker had taken her handbag, phone, and camera, but they left behind valuables such as her gold earrings, wedding ring, and expensive watch. A review of local camera footage showed a young woman resembling Sarai filming with her phone. A man then approached her, punched and pushed her, and both disappeared from view of the camera. Unfortunately, the identity of the attacker was not immediately known, leading to mixed reviews. The incident quickly gained international attention after details of the case were leaked to the media. There have been many questions and mixed reviews about Sarai's international travels. And police suspect that Sarai flew to Istanbul to visit an acquaintance, Taylan, whose real name is Taran, and then planned to meet another man in Austria. However, both men have denied having an intimate relationship with Sarai. The high-profile case was investigated jointly by Turkey's special services and the FBI, but initially, neither agency had any concrete leads to follow. A few weeks after the crime, police tracked down the suspect, Zoe Sarnacki, who had a criminal record and made a living by picking up scraps of paper on the city streets. However, before they could question him, Zoe borrowed money from relatives and fled the country, likely crossing into Syria through Hatay province. Police obtained a search warrant for his home and collected a DNA sample. They compared the DNA to skin particles and semen found on Sarai's body, confirming their suspicions that Zoe was indeed the perpetrator. Sarai's phone was last active in the neighborhood where he lived. Police initially gave up on arresting Zoe after learning that he had fled to Syria. However, an unexpected development changed everything. The suspect attempted to cross the border into Istanbul again, this time to return home, but was arrested for illegal entry. Before his arrest, he had joined a rebel group in Syria, acquired a gun, and was injured in the conflict. Fearing for his safety, he decided to return to Istanbul with the gun, leading to his arrest. Border police quickly alerted security services upon discovering his true identity. During questioning, Zoe Sarnacki gave a statement. On a hiking trail to the Sarai wall, he noticed a young woman and watched her from a distance, admiring her as she took pictures. As he approached her, the woman, who appeared to be trying to communicate with him through gestures, seemed to try to ask him something, but Zoe did not understand because of the language barrier. However, he noticed that she had a brand new iPhone and an expensive camera, which caught his attention. As she continued walking, he followed her. It was getting dark and there was no one else around, near the location next to the wall. At one point, Zoe thought that Sarai was taking pictures of him, which angered him. He picked up a large rock and hit Sarai on the head. The two rolled down the rubble of the wall. After Sarai was knocked unconscious, Zoe took advantage of the situation and sexually assaulted her. Zoe then delivered another serious blow to the head to finish Sarai off. Zoe took Sarai's belongings, including her bag, camera, and phone, and left the scene. As he was leaving, he came across a discarded blanket and decided to return to cover her body. He then dragged the body to a location out of sight of the hiking trail. He then covered the body with a blanket and left. Notably, while the search for Sarai was ongoing, Zoe returned to the crime scene again to confirm that the victim, Sarai, was dead and that her body was still in the same position he had left it. When Zoe found out on the news that the victim's body had been found, he knew the police would soon be looking for him, so he decided to flee the country. He borrowed money from his sister, who often felt sorry for him. The stolen items turned out to be worthless to Zia. The camera was broken during the fall and the smartphone was locked with a password that he could not crack. Therefore, he threw away the smartphone along with the other stolen items when he fled. Zia did not deny his guilt, and judging by his testimony, he had no remorse for what he had done, nor was he troubled by his conscience. Important evidence presented in court included forensic DNA analysis. This analysis showed that the skin found under Sarai's fingernails belonged to Zia and that his DNA was also found on her body. Additional evidence included data from Sarai's cell phone, which showed that it was last used near Zia's home. Additionally, a surveillance video recording of the attack added to the case file and supported the evidence against Zia. The presentation of all the evidence led to the decision that Zia should undergo a psychiatric evaluation. This decision was based on concerns about his sanity due to his unstable behavior and calm description of the violent crimes he had committed. The experts ultimately concluded that Zia was sane and fully aware of his actions at the time of the attack. In 2014, Judge Ely made the final decision in the case. Zia Sarnacki was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. This decision was accepted by Sarai's family, who felt it was appropriate. After a thorough autopsy, Sarai's body was returned to New York for burial. Her funeral was held according to the family's wishes and in accordance with their religious beliefs. In her memory, Sarai's family created a website featuring her previously unpublished work, including photographs. The photographs attracted international attention, with people from all over the world wanting to buy them. The money raised from the sale of the photographs was set aside by the family for a charitable cause. Her husband, Stephen, began a close relationship with a woman in the Christian community who supported him during this difficult time and regularly helped him with childcare and household chores. Less than 2 weeks before the anniversary of his wife's death, Stephen married his new partner. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Catherine Vinci. Ronald Vinci was born on August 16, 1940, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. From a young age, he showed a natural talent for entrepreneurship. In his 20s, he started his first business by renting a space on the Pacific Coast to sell Honda motorcycles. Over time, his small shop grew into one of the largest Honda dealership centers in the state. As his business success continued to grow, so did his wealth. Ronald expanded his business by opening more car dealerships, which significantly increased his earnings. Those who worked for him often described him as a strong-willed and determined individual. In his personal life, Ronald Vinci was married to a woman named Pamela, with whom he had a son named Carrie. However, their marriage eventually ended in divorce. After his divorce, Ronald began living a more extravagant lifestyle, spending his wealth on luxury items such as expensive toys, airplanes, and helicopters. His passion for collecting aircraft led him to acquire a large hangar to house his extensive collection. Ronald simplified his daily commute to work by securing government approval to build a helicopter pad on his property, despite some of his neighbors opposing the idea. Having the helicopter pad allowed him to commute to work directly from home by helicopter. He also had helicopter pads installed on the roofs of his car dealerships, making it easier for him to travel by air. Ronald, then 50 years old, met 34 years old Catherine in 1990. At the time, Catherine worked as a flight attendant. She originally from a family in a rural area of Georgia. Growing up, she participated in local beauty pageants where her bright smile and charisma easily captivated people. Her striking beauty and cheerful personality earned her many admirers. After completing her education, Catherine worked as a lab technician at a veterans hospital for several years. However, she felt unfulfilled and longed for more in life. Seeking a change, Catherine left her job in 1980 to join Delta Airlines as a flight attendant, earning an annual income of $20,000. She enjoyed her new role, taking care of passengers and serving meals, and even acquired useful tips like using coffee grounds to eliminate unpleasant odors on airplane seats. 10 years into her career as a flight attendant, Catherine's life took a dramatic turn. In 1990, she met Ronald Vinci, a millionaire, on a flight. Despite their 14-year age difference, they fell in love, drawn to each other's charming personalities. Catherine eventually left her job and moved into Ronald's luxurious California home. Together, they shared a passion for travel and explored various destinations, with Aspen, Colorado, being a favorite getaway spot. Ronald and Catherine were in a decade-long relationship, but Ronald never proposed to Catherine. Eventually, they decided to part ways. Catherine moved to Florida, seeking a fresh start and a new partner. In April 2001, at age 45, Catherine began a relationship with 63-year-old Dilio Carano, a financially stable insurance agent, after being introduced by mutual friends. She shared with Dilio her previous unhappy relationship with Ronald, explained that it was a difficult time, filled with arguments, excessive drinking, and infidelity. Ronald had never proposed, despite her decade-long hope for marriage. Dilio promptly proposed to Catherine, and they got married in May 2001, just a month after meeting. After their wedding, the couple settled in Miami Beach, Florida, and Catherine seemed content with the marriage. Dilio describes Catherine's initial demeanor as being like a house cat, gentle, calm, and eating very little. In addition, Catherine is very afraid of water. She cannot bathe in the ocean, sea, or river. A few months into their marriage, Dilio noticed a dramatic change in Catherine's behavior. She began asking him for large sums of money, insisting that he buy her clothes and gifts. She would often compare him to her friends' more generous husbands. According to Dilio, Catherine was taking about $55,000 per month from him. She claimed the money was for education expenses, but never provided any receipts. After a few months of this financial strain, Dilio realized he had made a mistake by rushing into the marriage. He decided he wanted a divorce. The separation process was relatively easy, as they had no children or shared assets. Court documents revealed that Dilio's net worth was $4.5 million, while Catherine had only $8,000 in her accounts. As Catherine prepared to move out of Dilio's house, she was overwhelmed with sadness and despair. In 2005, Ronald Vinci, a wealthy millionaire, made a big change by moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where friends had convinced him he would enjoy a favorable climate and low taxes. Prior to the move, Ronald had sold his car dealerships and amassed a substantial fortune. He purchased a luxurious fourth-floor apartment in Fort Lauderdale and soon reconnected with Catherine, a flight attendant he had previously dated. Catherine moved in with Ronald, and they rekindled their romance. Coincidentally, Catherine's ex-husband, Dilio Carano, lived in the same building but 30 floors. Dilio was perplexed by Catherine's decision to reconnect with Ronald, whom she had previously described as a monster. Neither Ronald nor Catherine go to work. They enjoyed a life of leisure, but their differences became increasingly apparent. Ronald struggled with his weight due to his love of rich foods, while Catherine maintained a strict diet and a very low weight of 42 kilograms. Ronald and Catherine had distinct personalities. Ronald loved attending lively parties, whereas Catherine preferred quieter evenings at home, often lost in crime novels. She favored casual clothing like shorts and sneakers. Despite their contrasting tastes, they commonly traveled together, exploring the Caribbean islands by air and sailing across the ocean. However, she struggled with aquaphobia, and her diary entries revealed her intense fear of the ocean. Ronald consistently encouraged Catherine to overcome her fear, and she made an effort to join him on these adventures despite her anxieties. This suggests Ronald had a strong influence over her. When not traveling, Ronald and Catherine would often host gatherings at their home. During these events, Ronald enjoyed great food and drinks, frequently ordering $1 tacos and strong beverages when out with friends at budget-friendly bars along the Fort Lauderdale waterfront. On occasion, he would embarrass Catherine by implying she was entirely dependent on him. Despite this, Catherine remained calm and composed. However, Catherine maintained her composure. She would quietly cater to Ronald's needs, especially when he had been drinking, by serving drinks and snacks and attending to his friends. Ronald's relationship with Catherine persisted for 5 years, despite his increasing hesitation to propose marriage. By 2010, he began sharing his feelings with friends, revealing his desire to end the relationship and find a younger partner. In early 2011, Ronald was hospitalized due to severe intestinal issues, which his doctors attributed to his years of excessive alcohol consumption. Prior to the hospitalization, Ronald had noticed an unusual change in the taste of his food, which sparked concern for his health. A friend joked that Catherine might have tried to poison him, but Ronald dismissed the idea without considering it seriously. Ronald's health issues mainly stemmed from his poor self-care. His frequent consumption of alcohol and pills, which he used to unwind and sleep, had severe negative effects on his body. Ronald Vinci purchased a $3 million waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale in June 2011, where he planned to spend his retirement. The 70-year-old millionaire looked forward to visits from his son, Kerry, and his grandson. Kerry worked as a waiter, a job that Ronald often teased his about, Ronald jokingly suggesting he was holding out for his inheritance. Tragedy struck on the afternoon of June 28, 2011. When Ronald's gardener called 911, reporting an incident at the mansion. Upon arrival, police found Ronald's lifeless body in a guest bedroom, wrapped in plastic bags and tightly sealed with tape inside a sleeping bag. Additionally, the sleeping bag contained soiled sheets and was covered with what appeared to be wet dirt, later confirmed to be coffee grounds. A further investigation revealed a slashed mattress. The gardener told the police that Catherine had said Ronald fell down the stairs, hit his head, and died. However, the officers were not convinced it was an accident. During questioning, the gardener provided a disturbing account of the incident before finding Ronald Vinci's body. When the gardener arrived at the Ronald residence in the morning, after receiving an urgent call from Catherine late at night, he was met with an horrific scene. Ronald's lifeless body was wrapped tightly in a sleeping bag in a guest bedroom. Catherine, visibly upset, begged the gardener to help her bury Ronald, revealing that Ronald wanted to be laid to rest in the ocean after his death. To fulfill this wish, Catherine had bought a blue container for Ronald's body, intending to take it out to sea on Ronald's yacht. Catherine had already stored the container in her garage before authorities were notified by the gardener. The medical examiner's thorough examination revealed horrific findings. 70-year-old Ronald had suffered from 9 stab wounds to his chest and neck, had injuries consistent with being hit by a hammer, and was ultimately killed by a gunshot wound to the head. Earlier, on the evening of June 27, friends gathered at Ronald's house. Catherine prepared a meal for the guests, while Ronald served drinks. The evening seemed normal at first, but it quickly turned into a tragic one. On the evening in question, Ronald reported that his passport and one of his pistols were missing during dinner. He also complained about the food, saying it was unusually bitter. Feeling unwell, Ronald unexpectedly went to bed at 7:30 p.m. A departure from his usual late-night routine. His friends found this early bedtime suspicious and eventually left his house. Later that night, Catherine was brought in for questioning. In her confession, she described a confrontation with Ronald, which occurred around 1 a.m. on June 28. According to she, a drunk Ronald woke up and began verbally insulting her. The situation escalated, resulting in Ronald chasing her down the stairs. However, he lost his balance, stumbled, and fell, hitting his head severely. Catherine claimed that she helped Ronald up and led him to a guest bedroom on the first floor. After cleaning the blood stains on the stairs, she checked on him a few hours later and found him asleep with a loaded gun. Catherine stated that she feared for her life, believing Ronald might kill her. In a state of fear and desperation, she grabbed the gun and shot Ronald in the head. During the interrogation, Catherine explained her actions, saying she was consumed by fear and anger, feeling as though her soul had left her body. After the shooting, Catherine further injured Ronald by stabbing him with a knife and hitting him with a hammer. She then wrapped his body in a bag in an attempt to hide the evidence. Realizing she needed help, Catherine contacted someone known as the gardener for assistance with disposing of the body. Before hiding the body, Catherine purchased a large container from a hardware store, intending to use it to dispose of Ronald's body in the ocean. This was confirmed by surveillance camera photos. Subsequent investigations uncovered a gun in Catherine's car, with her fingerprints on it, matching the gun used to shoot Ronald. Her car also contained a knife, pieces of a cut-up mattress, clothing, rubber gloves, all stained with Ronald's blood. Catherine was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Just a month before the crime, she had been involved in a dispute with her sister. Catherine's sister claimed that she had borrowed money and refused to pay it back. But she maintained that the money was a gift and therefore did not owe her sister anything. Ronald's neighbors reported hearing screams coming from his house on the night of the murder. Additionally, a witness spotted a white vehicle with a large trailer near Ronald's house early in the morning. The car belonged to the gardener. According to Ronald's friends, he had been trying to end his relationship with Catherine for some time. The couple had been experiencing marital problems, including a lack of intimacy, and had been sleeping in separate rooms for months. In an attempt to finalize the separation, Ronald had tried to give she $1 million, just weeks before the tragedy, asking her to leave their house permanently. Prosecutors suspect Catherine's main motive was fear of losing her wealthy partner, Ronald. In contrast, Catherine's defense team argued that she was a victim of severe abuse and had acted in self-defense. Several questions arose during the trial, including why Catherine didn't immediately contact the police, why she initially lied about the incident, and why she endured years of abuse without leaving Ronald. Catherine's relatives testified in her defense, and a court psychiatrist identified signs of domestic abuse. However, none of Ronald's close friends or associates witnessed or reported any mistreatment in their relationship. Instead, they described she as calm and content, never complaining about her life. During the trial, Catherine made a surprising accusation against Ronald, claiming that he was responsible for the sudden and mysterious death of her younger sister, Angela, in December 2009. Catherine, Ronald, and Angela went on a Caribbean cruise together. Angela struggled with substance abuse and, during a party on the ship, she drank excessively, leading to severe illness and intense convulsions. In an attempt to save her sister, Catherine performed CPR, but unfortunately, Angela's heart stopped and she passed away. It was later discovered that Ronald had given Angela some pills on the evening of the cruise, which allegedly were intended to help her relax. Catherine strongly believed that these pills played a role in her sister's death. However, in an unexpected turn of events, Catherine was found guilty of Ronald's murder in 2014. The jury delivered a verdict that resulted in Catherine being sentenced to 25 years in prison. She is currently serving her sentence at the LEL Correctional Institution in Marin County, Florida, and is set to be released in January 2034, at the age of 77.